When Ethan Cole walked into his daughter's school that Tuesday evening, covered in construction dust and running 20 minutes late, he had no idea his entire world was about to implode. The woman standing beside the classroom door, polished, untouchable, impossibly beautiful, was supposed to be a ghost. She'd vanished 10 years ago without explanation, without goodbye, leaving nothing but questions that had slowly calcified into scars. Now Lena Hart stood before him like she'd never left, like she hadn't shattered him completely. Their eyes met across that fluorescent-lit hallway, and the carefully rebuilt life Ethan had constructed for himself and his daughter began to crack at the foundations. If you want to see how a love that was buried comes back to life, and whether forgiveness is even possible after a decade of silence, stay with me until the very end. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The hallway smelled like floor wax and children's art supplies, but Ethan Cole mostly smelled like sawdust and honest sweat. He'd come straight from the Martinez site, a 6-story mixed-use development downtown that was eating 14-hour days and spitting out exhausted men. His work boots left faint prints on the polished linoleum as he hurried toward room 14, checking his phone for the third time. 6:47 p.m. Parent-teacher night had started at 6:30. He could already hear Mia's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, in his head. "Mr. Cole, punctuality models responsibility for children." The woman wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't a single father juggling a foreman position with a 7-year-old's homework, dinner, bedtime, and the constant low-grade panic that he was failing at all of it simultaneously. Ethan rounded the corner past the trophy case, his steel-toed boots heavy against the floor, and that's when the world stopped. She was standing beside the door to room 14, one hand resting against the painted cinderblock wall, looking down at something on her phone. Professional. Composed. Wearing a charcoal blazer that probably cost more than his monthly rent and heels that made her almost his height. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that showcased the elegant line of her neck, and even from 15 feet away, Ethan could see she'd changed, polished in ways that made her seem like she belonged to a different atmosphere entirely. But he would have recognized Lena Hart in the dark, in a crowd of thousands, in his sleep. His boots stopped moving. His heart, conversely, went into overdrive, slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape the cage of his chest. Lena looked up. For one crystalline second, her professional mask shattered completely. Her eyes, still that impossible shade of green that had haunted his dreams for a decade, went wide with something that looked like shock, or maybe recognition, or possibly fear. Her phone dipped in her hand. Her lips parted slightly, and Ethan watched her chest rise with a sharp inhale. Then, just as quickly, she recovered. The composure slid back into place like armor, smooth and practiced. She straightened, and something unreadable flickered across her features. "Ethan," she said, and his name in her voice after 10 years of silence hit him like a physical blow. He couldn't speak. His throat had closed completely. All the things he'd imagined saying if he ever saw her again, all the demands for explanation, all the accusations, all the desperate questions, evaporated like steam. He just stood there, a construction worker in dirty jeans and a company t-shirt, staring at the woman who disappeared from his life like she'd never existed. Lena started, then stopped. She glanced at the classroom door, then back at him, and for the first time since that initial shock, he saw something human beneath the polish. Uncertainty, maybe. "You're here for the conference?" The question was so absurd that it jolted Ethan back into his body. "My daughter," he managed, his voice rough. "Mia Cole, she's in Mrs. Patterson's class." Something complicated crossed Lena's face. "Mia," she repeated softly. "The little girl with the braids who reads during recess." "You know my daughter?" The words came out sharper than he intended, carrying a decade of abandonment and confusion. "I volunteer here," Lena said quietly. "Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Reading program." She paused, and he watched her swallow. "I didn't know... Mia never mentioned..." "Mentioned what? That her dad's name is Ethan?" He heard the bitterness in his own voice and hated it. Hated that after all this time, she could still unravel him so easily. Why would she? It's It's not like you asked. Mr. Cole? Mrs. Patterson's voice emerged from the classroom, bright and professional. Oh, good, you're here. We can start your conference now. I'm so sorry about the wait. Ethan couldn't look away from Lena. 10 years. 10 years of silence, of wondering, of slowly teaching himself to stop wondering. And now here she was, standing in his daughter's elementary school, volunteering like some kind of benevolent stranger, wearing clothes that cost more than his truck payment. I should... Lena gestured vaguely down the hallway, already stepping back. I was just leaving. I didn't mean to... Wait. The word came out before Ethan could think better of it. Lena froze, and for a moment, the polished professional exterior cracked again. She looked scared, he realized. Actually scared. Mr. Cole? Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway now, all smiles and efficient energy. Oh, Miss Hart, are you heading out? Yes, Before you go, I wanted to thank you again for the donation of new books for the Reading Corner. The children absolutely love them. Mrs. Patterson beamed at Lena with genuine warmth. Ms. Hart has been such a blessing to our program, Mr. Cole. She's wonderful with the kids, especially the reluctant readers. Your Mia has really blossomed since Ms. Hart started working with her. Ethan felt like he was watching this exchange from underwater. Lena had been working with Mia, his Mia, for how long? It's nothing, Lena said quietly, still not quite looking at Ethan. The kids deserve good books. Well, we're incredibly grateful. Mrs. Patterson turned her attention fully to Ethan. Shall we? I know you're pressed for time. Ethan nodded numbly, but his eyes were still on Lena, who was now deliberately studying something on the bulletin board like it contained the secrets of the universe. I'll see you Thursday, Ms. Hart, Mrs. Patterson said cheerfully, already ushering Ethan toward the classroom. Thursday, Lena echoed. She finally met Ethan's eyes again, and this time what he saw there nearly stopped his heart a second time. It was grief, raw and deep, before she shuddered it away. Have a good evening, Mr. Cole. She was gone before he could respond, her heels clicking purposefully down the hallway toward the exit. Ethan watched her go, his mind reeling, until Mrs. Patterson gently touched his elbow. Mr. Cole, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. He almost laughed at that. Almost. Yeah, he said instead, forcing himself to turn toward the classroom. Sorry, long day. But as he settled into the child-sized chair beside Mrs. Patterson's desk, surrounded by Mia's artwork and spelling tests, all he could think about was the look on Lena's face. The fear, the grief, and the inescapable fact that she'd been in his daughter's life, and he'd had no idea. The apartment was dark when they got home, the way it always was until Ethan flipped the switches and brought it reluctantly to life. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, but it was clean and it was safe, and it was theirs. That had to be enough. Dad, you're being weird, Mia announced from the doorway, dropping her backpack with the casual precision of a child who'd been told 1,000 times not to drop it exactly there. I'm not being weird, Ethan said automatically, hanging his keys on the hook by the door. You are. You've been weird since we left school. Mia kicked off her shoes, purple light-up sneakers that had been a compromise between what she wanted and what he could afford. Mrs. Patterson said you did good at the conference, but you look like when you found that dead rat in the basement. Mia. What? You did. All scrunched up and sad. She demonstrated with her face, which would have been funny if Ethan wasn't so thoroughly rattled. He moved to the kitchen, needing something to do with his hands. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. How about mac and cheese for dinner? The good kind or the box kind? What do you think? Box kind, Mia sighed dramatically. Can I have carrot sticks too? Ms. Hart says vegetables make your brain work better. Ethan's hand froze on the refrigerator handle. Ms. Hart talks to you about vegetables? She talks to me about lots of stuff. Mia climbed onto one of the 2 bar stools at their tiny counter. She's really nice, Dad. She brings books that aren't even from the school library, real books with pretty covers. And she doesn't get mad when I ask questions, not like Mr. Henderson did last year. Ethan pulled out the box of macaroni, his movements mechanical. How long has Mrs. Hart been volunteering? I don't know. Since October, maybe?
She comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Sometimes she stays after and helps kids who are struggling. Mia swung her legs, her heels thumping against the bar stool. She helped me understand fractions. I hate fractions. October. 3 months. Lena had been in Mia's life for 3 months, and he'd had no idea. Did she... Ethan cleared his throat, filling a pot with water. Did she ever ask about your family? About me? Mia's brow furrowed. Not really. I told her my mom died when I was a baby, and she got really quiet and sad-looking. Then she gave me an extra book to take home. It was about a girl who lived with her dad and they had adventures. She paused. Why? Do you know Miss Hart? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ethan turned away, focusing on the stove, the simple mechanical task of making dinner for his daughter. We knew each other, he said finally. A long time ago. Like how long? Before I was born? Yeah, baby, before you were born. Were you friends? More than that, he thought. So much more than that.
Something like that. Mia was quiet for a moment, which was always dangerous. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, the way it got when she was trying to navigate adult emotions she didn't quite understand. Did something bad happen? Is that why you're weird? Ethan closed his eyes, 7 years old and already too perceptive. She got that from her mother. Sarah had been able to read him like a book too. It's complicated, Mia. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to explain. Fair enough? He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. Ms. Hart and I were close once. Then she went away and we didn't talk anymore. Seeing her tonight was unexpected. Did you fight? No, she just left. Mia processed this with the seriousness of a much older soul. That's sad, she said finally. Because she's really nice, Dad. She makes me feel like reading is an adventure, not homework. And last week when Tommy Hernandez said my hair looked stupid, she told him that unique beauty is better than ordinary beauty any day, and that my braids were art. Ethan felt something crack in his chest. Of course Lena would say that. Of course she would see his daughter, their daughter, if things had been different, if life had gone another way, and give her exactly what she needed. She sounds like a good teacher, he managed. She's not a teacher. She's a volunteer, but yeah. Mia brightened. Maybe you could talk to her. If you were friends before, you could be friends again. Then she could come over for dinner and you wouldn't have to make box mac and cheese because grown-ups always bring good food. Mia, I'm just saying, Dad, you're always talking about how it's important to fix things when they're broken. Maybe your friendship with Ms. Hart is like the bathroom sink. You just need the right tools. Despite everything, Ethan felt a smile tug at his mouth. Since when did you become a relationship expert? Since forever. I'm very mature for my age. Mrs. Patterson said so. Of course she did. Ethan ruffled her hair as he passed, heading to the cabinet for bowls. Set the table, mature for your age. Dinner in 5. But as Mia bustled around their small kitchen, chattering about her day and a science project on volcanoes, Ethan's mind was elsewhere. Back in that hallway. Back in Lena's eyes, seeing that flash of grief before she locked it away. She'd been working with Mia for months, close enough to see the gap in her smile where she'd lost a tooth, close enough to know she struggled with fractions, close enough to defend her against schoolyard cruelty. And she'd never said a word. The question that had haunted him for 10 years roared back to life with fresh urgency. Why did you leave? And now, equally pressing, why did you come back? Thursday arrived like a countdown. Ethan couldn't stop. He went through the motions at work, checking welds, reviewing blueprints, managing his crew, but his mind kept drifting to that elementary school hallway, to Lena's face when she saw him, to the careful way she'd said his name, like it hurt her mouth. By 2:45 p.m., he'd made a decision that was probably stupid and definitely impulsive. Martinez, he called to his second, a stocky guy from El Paso with 30 years of construction wisdom. I need to cut out early. Family thing. Martinez looked up from the concrete forms he was inspecting, one eyebrow raised. Family thing? You never leave early. Yeah, well, first time for everything. Everything okay? Mia all right? She's fine. Ethan pulled off his hard hat, ran a hand through sweat-dampened hair. I need to handle something.
Martinez studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Go. We got this. But Cole, whatever you're walking into, make sure you're ready for it. Ethan wasn't sure what his face was showing, but clearly it was enough to warrant the warning. Thanks, man. He made it to Mia's school by 3:15, parking his beat-up Ford Ranger in the visitor lot and trying to ignore the way his heart was hammering. The volunteer reading program ran until 4 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the library. He knew this because he'd spent his lunch break doing something he hadn't done in years: internet stalking. Lena Hart wasn't hard to find online. What was hard was processing what he found. CEO of Meridian Development, featured in business magazines, keynote speaker at urban planning conferences. Net worth estimated in the 8 figures. The articles painted a picture of a woman who'd built an empire through intelligence, vision, and ruthless efficiency. Nothing about the girl he'd known. The girl who'd studied art history and talked about opening a gallery someday. The girl who'd worn thrift store sundresses and made him mix CDs because she said streaming killed the romance of music. The library was at the east end of the building, past the cafeteria and the gym. Through the window in the door, Ethan could see clusters of students bent over books. And there, at a table near the window, was Lena. She was reading aloud to 3 kids, including Mia, her voice too muffled to make out words, but animated enough that all 3 children were completely absorbed. Mia was leaning forward, elbows on the table, chin in her hands, utterly enchanted. Ethan's chest constricted. His daughter looked happy. More than happy. She looked like a kid who'd found something precious. He pushed open the door. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, looked up from her desk with a welcoming smile. Can I help you? I'm here to pick up my daughter, Mia Cole. Oh, of course. She's just finishing up with Miss Hart's group. They've got about 10 more minutes if you'd like to wait. Actually, I'd like to speak with Ms. Hart. The words came out more firmly than he felt. If that's possible. Mrs. Chen's smile faltered slightly, picking up on something in his tone. Of course. Let me just... But Lena had already looked up. Even from across the room, Ethan saw the moment she registered his presence. Saw her posture shift, her shoulders straightening like she was preparing for impact. She said something to the kids. Mia's face lit up with surprise when she spotted him, and stood, smoothing her hands down her slacks. Today's outfit was navy blue, paired with a cream blouse. Still expensive. Still untouchable. She crossed the library with measured steps, and Ethan found himself cataloging every detail. The way she walked, confident but not quite easy. The absence of rings on her fingers. The subtle makeup that somehow made her look both professional and naturally beautiful. Mr. Cole. She stopped a careful distance away, maintaining that formal tone. Is everything all right? Mia's been doing wonderfully with her reading comprehension. If there's a concern... Can we talk? Ethan interrupted. Privately? A flash of something, panic maybe, crossed her face before the composure returned. Of course. Mrs. Chen, could you keep an eye on the group for just a moment? Absolutely, the librarian said, though her expression suggested she was deeply curious about what was happening. Lena led him to a corner near the reference section, far enough from the kids that they wouldn't be overheard. She turned to face him, crossing her arms, a defensive gesture that told him more than any words could. Ethan, she started, then stopped, swallowed. I know this must be confusing. Confusing? The word came out harder than he intended. Lena, you disappeared 10 years ago without a word. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing. I looked for you. For months I looked. Your phone was disconnected. Your apartment was empty. Your friends said they didn't know where you'd gone. And then I finally gave up because what else could I do? He was aware he was speaking too loudly, too intensely, but 10 years of unasked questions were flooding out. And now you're here, reading books to my daughter like the past never happened? Lena's jaw tightened. I know how it looks. How it looks. How it looks is like you built an entire life, became some kind of corporate titan, and decided slumming it at an elementary school would be a nice hobby. How it looks is like my daughter. His voice cracked. Mia loves you, Lena. She talks about you at dinner. She quotes you. And you never thought to mention that you knew her father? I didn't know. The words burst out of her, sharp and pained. Ethan, I swear to God, I had no idea Mia was your daughter. The school doesn't share parent information with volunteers. I saw Mia Cole on a list, and it never... She pressed her fingers to her temples. Cole is a common name. I didn't make the connection. Until Tuesday night. Until Tuesday night, she confirmed quietly. When I saw you in that hallway, She stopped, her composure finally cracking. I didn't plan this. Any of this. Then why are you here? Ethan demanded. Why this school? Why volunteer at all? You're a CEO. Don't you have better things to do? Something flickered across her face, hurt maybe, or anger. Because I wanted to do something that mattered, she said, her voice low and controlled. Something real. Something that wasn't about profit margins or development deals or board meetings. Is that so hard to believe? From you? Yeah, actually. He gestured at her outfit, her polish, everything she'd become. The Lena I knew wanted to work in an art gallery, not demolish neighborhoods for luxury condos. Her eyes flashed. The Lena you knew was a different person. People change, Ethan. Circumstances change them. What circumstances? What happened that made you run away without even a note? Without giving me a chance to... He stopped, aware they were drawing attention now. Mrs. Chen was pointedly not looking at them, but her posture was alert. To what? Fix it? Help? Understand? There was nothing to fix, Lena said, but her voice wavered. It was my decision, my life. And I was what? Just collateral damage? No, God, no. She closed her eyes briefly. You deserved better than I could give you then. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. She opened her eyes, and the grief he'd glimpsed on Tuesday was back, deeper this time. I can't do this here, Ethan. Not in front of the kids, not with Mia 10 feet away. He wanted to push, wanted to demand real answers right here, right now. But Mia was watching them, her small face confused and concerned, and he remembered what mattered most. Fine, he said tightly. But this isn't over, Lena. Not by a long shot. You don't get to just show up in my daughter's life and expect me to pretend the past doesn't exist. I never expected that, she said quietly. I never expected any of this. Dad? Mia's voice cut through the tension. She'd abandoned her reading group and was approaching cautiously. Is everything okay? You look mad. Ethan forced his expression to soften, crouching down to Mia's level. Everything's fine, baby. I just came to pick you up a little early. But we're not done with the chapter. Ms. Hart was just getting to the good part where the dragon... I can finish it next Tuesday, Lena interjected, her professional voice back in place. You can tell your dad all about the story on the way home. Mia looked between them, her perceptiveness working overtime. Are you guys fighting? Because you look like how me and Sophie looked before Mrs. Patterson made us talk about our feelings. We're not fighting, Lena said before Ethan could respond. Your dad and I are just catching up. We haven't seen each other in a long time. Oh, Mia brightened. So you are old friends. I told Dad you guys should talk. Maybe you could come to dinner sometime. Dad makes really good spaghetti. Well, it's from a jar, but he adds stuff to it. The offer hung in the air, innocent and impossible. Ethan watched Lena's face, saw the longing that flashed there before she locked it down. That's very sweet, Mia, Lena said gently, but I'm sure your dad and I both have busy schedules. That's what grown-ups always say when they mean no, Mia said with the devastating honesty of childhood. But it's okay. You're still my favorite reading teacher, even if you can't come to dinner. You're one of my favorite students, Lena replied, and the warmth in her voice was genuine. Now go get your things. Your dad's waiting. As Mia scampered back to collect her backpack, Ethan straightened, meeting Lena's eyes one more time. This conversation isn't finished, he said quietly. I know. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking less like a corporate titan and more like the girl he'd once known, vulnerable, scared. Ethan, I really didn't know. About Mia. And if I'd known, I wouldn't have what? Gotten close to her? He shook his head. She needs people in her life who care about her. I'm not going to deny her that because of our history, but I need answers, Lena. Real ones. and I'm not going to just let this go. I understand. She took a breath. For what it's worth, she's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job with her. The compliment landed harder than it should have, touching something raw in Ethan's chest. He'd been raising Mia alone since she was 8 months old, since Sarah's car accident had ripped away any illusions that life was fair or predictable. Every day was a battle against inadequacy, against the fear that he wasn't enough. I'm trying, he said roughly. It shows. Lena's smile was sad and genuine. She talks about you all the time, how you help with her homework even when you're tired, how you make silly voices when you read bedtime stories, how you never miss a school event, even when you have to come straight from work. She paused. You're a good father, Ethan. Whatever else has happened between us, please know that I see that. Before he could respond, before he could process the emotions churning through him, Mia was back, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Ready, Dad? Yeah, baby, let's go. He placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the door, but he looked back at Lena one more time. Tuesday, he said. We'll talk Tuesday. She nodded, understanding the promise and the threat in those words. Tuesday. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, staring at images of Lena at charity galas, cutting ribbons at building openings, shaking hands with city officials. Meridian Development had fingerprints all over the city's recent growth: mixed-use buildings, luxury apartments, commercial spaces, including, he realized with growing unease, the Martinez project he was currently working on. He pulled up the project specs, scrolling through the documentation he usually only skimmed. There it was, buried in the financial breakdown. Primary funding, Meridian Development Group. Additional investors listed below, but Meridian was the major player. Lena's company was funding the project that paid his salary. The project that, if it stayed on schedule, would mean a significant bonus, money he'd already earmarked for Mia's summer camp, and finally replacing the washing machine that was held together with prayer and duct tape. Jesus, he muttered, scrubbing his hands over his face. His phone buzzed. A text from Martinez. Everything okay with the family thing? Ethan stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, Yeah. Just complicated. The response was immediate. Complicated is what happens when you care. Simple is for people who don't give a damn. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Martinez had 5 kids and 30 years of marriage. If anyone understood complicated, it was him. He closed the laptop, but sleep felt impossible. His mind kept circling back to that library, to the look on Lena's face when she'd said there was nothing to fix, to the way she'd watched Mia with something that looked like longing and loss combined. What had happened 10 years ago? What could have been so catastrophic that she'd disappeared completely, built an empire, and ended up volunteering at an elementary school reading to kids? And why, despite everything, did seeing her again feel like finding something he hadn't realized he'd still been looking for? In the next room, Mia murmured something in her sleep. Ethan got up, moving quietly to her doorway. She was sprawled across her twin bed, covers tangled, one arm hanging off the side. Her nightlight, a turtle that projected stars across the ceiling, painted her room in soft greens and blues. She looked peaceful, happy. And she loved Lena. That was the thing that made this whole situation impossible to navigate. If it were just him, just his heart, he could build walls, protect himself, keep Lena at a distance until he had answers, or until she disappeared again, whichever came first. But Mia was involved now. Mia, who'd lost one mother already. Mia, who lit up when she talked about Ms. Hart and her books and her kindness. He couldn't protect himself without potentially hurting his daughter, and he couldn't let Lena closer without risking the same wounds that had taken him years to stop bleeding from. Complicated, he'd told Martinez. That was the understatement of the decade. Ethan pulled Mia's door mostly closed and returned to the kitchen table, but not to the laptop. Instead, he pulled out a small box from the back of his junk drawer, something he hadn't looked at in years. Inside were the few physical remnants of his relationship with Lena, a ticket stub from a concert, a photo booth strip of them laughing, young and impossibly hopeful. A small sketch she'd made of him reading, all confident lines and careful shading. He'd been 23 when they met. She'd been 21, both young, both broke, both convinced they were going to set the world on fire with passion and determination and love. Then she'd vanished, and he'd learned that sometimes people left, and there was nothing you could do about it. He'd learned it again when Sarah died, Mia still in diapers, and the universe had made it very clear that Ethan Cole's job was to endure, to survive, to keep showing up. He'd gotten good at enduring. But sitting there, holding a photo of a girl who didn't exist anymore, looking at the face of a woman he'd once thought he'd spend his life with, Ethan realized something unsettling. He didn't want to just endure anymore. He wanted answers. He wanted truth. And somewhere, beneath the anger and the confusion and the self-protection, he wanted to understand what had happened to Lena Hart, and whether there was any part of the girl he'd loved still alive beneath the corporate armor. Tuesday was 4 days away. It felt like both too long and not nearly enough time to prepare for what was coming. Tuesday morning arrived with rain, the kind of persistent drizzle that made the construction site a miserable soup of mud and delayed schedules. Ethan spent the day watching his crews struggle with waterlogged equipment and slippery scaffolding, but his mind was barely on the work. Every time he checked his phone, the clock seemed to mock him with its slow progression toward 3:15 p.m. By 2 o'clock, he couldn't take it anymore. "Martinez, I'm out," he called across the site, not bothering with elaborate explanations this time. Martinez looked up from under his rain gear, water dripping off the brim of his hard hat. "Same family thing?" "Yeah." "You gonna tell me what's actually going on, or do I have to guess?" Ethan paused, one hand on his truck door. "Woman from my past showed up. It's complicated." "It always is." Martinez grinned. "Go, handle your business. But Cole, don't let pride make you stupid." The advice followed Ethan all the way to the elementary school, where he parked in the same spot as Thursday and sat watching rain streak down his windshield. He was early, too early. The reading program didn't even start for another 45 minutes, but the thought of going home, of waiting, of giving himself more time to overthink this, felt impossible. He went inside. The hallways were mostly empty, just a few teachers prepping classrooms for dismissal and a janitor buffing the floors near the front office. Ethan's boots squeaked against the linoleum as he made his way toward the library, not entirely sure what he was doing, but unable to stop moving forward. The library door was propped open. Inside, Lena sat at one of the tables, surrounded by stacks of books, her laptop open in front of her. She dressed down today, or what passed for dressed down in her world. Dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked younger like this, more like the girl he'd known, and something in Ethan's chest twisted painfully. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was focused on her laptop, one hand absently twisting a strand of hair while she typed with the other. It was such a familiar gesture that Ethan felt dizzy with déjà vu. How many times had he watched her do exactly that while studying, while writing papers, while lost in thought? He cleared his throat. Lena's head snapped up, and for just a moment before the professional mask descended, he saw raw nerves. "Ethan, you're early." "So are you." "I like to prep before the kids arrive. Make sure I have the right books pulled, activities planned." She closed her laptop carefully, like she needed something to do with her hands. "Did you want to talk now, before Mia gets here?" "Yeah." Ethan moved into the library, hyper-aware of the space between them. "If that's okay." "Of course." Lena gestured to the chair across from her, but Ethan remained standing. Sitting felt too casual, too much like this was a normal conversation between normal people with normal histories. "I did some research," he said, and watched her shoulders tense. "Meridian Development. That's your company." "Yes." "You're funding the Martinez project, the one I'm working on." A pause. "I wasn't certain until I checked our portfolio last week. We have investments in dozens of developments across the city. I don't personally oversee every project." "But you knew, after you saw me. You knew we were connected through the project." "I knew." She met his eyes steadily. "And I almost pulled my funding." That stopped him. "What?" "I spent 3 days trying to figure out how to extract Meridian from the project without causing issues for your company, for your job. I called emergency meetings, reviewed contracts, looked for loopholes." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My CFO thought I'd lost my mind.
We've got millions tied up in that development, and I was trying to find a way out because I couldn't stand the thought of you thinking I'd engineered this somehow, that I'd inserted myself into your life deliberately. Ethan absorbed this, trying to reconcile the powerful CEO who could casually discuss pulling millions from a project with the woman sitting in an elementary school library surrounded by children's books. Why didn't you? Because it would have hurt you more than helped. The Martinez project is solid, but it's still dependent on our funding. If we'd pulled out, the whole thing might have collapsed. Your company would have lost the contract. You would have lost your job. She folded her hands on the table, and he noticed they were trembling slightly. I couldn't do that to you. Not again. Not again? The words came out sharper than he intended. What the hell does that mean, Lena? She flinched. It means I've already caused you enough pain. I wasn't going to add to it. You want to talk about pain? You disappeared, Lena. Completely. I went to your apartment, and the landlord said you'd broken your lease, paid 3 months penalties, and left in the middle of the night. Your phone was disconnected. Your email bounced back. It was like you'd never existed. His voice was rising, and he forced himself to breathe. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? To think that someone you love just vanished? I thought something terrible had happened to you. I filed a missing persons report. Lena's face had gone pale. You filed it? Ethan, I didn't know. I never meant... What did you mean then? Help me understand, because I've been trying to figure it out for 10 years and I've got nothing. I can't... She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. Not here. Not now. Then when? Ethan moved closer, frustration and old hurt bleeding through. You keep saying you can't talk about it, but you owe me an explanation. You owe me that much. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I know I do. But Ethan, if I tell you, if you know the truth, everything changes, and I don't know if I can handle watching your face when you hear it. Try me. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and what he saw in her eyes made his anger falter. It was anguish, deep and terrible, the kind that came from carrying something too heavy for too long. I was pregnant, she whispered. The world tilted. Ethan heard the words, understood them individually, but together they didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. What? When I left, I was pregnant. 8 weeks. Lena's arms tightened around herself like she was physically holding herself together. I found out 3 days before I disappeared. I was terrified and confused, and I didn't know how to tell you because we were so young and broke, and you were just starting your apprenticeship. And I thought I could figure it out, that I had time. Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, pregnant. She'd been pregnant with his child, and she'd never told him. My mother found the test, Lena continued, her voice hollow now, like she was reciting facts from a great distance. I'd hidden it in my bathroom, but she came over unannounced and found it. And God, Ethan, she lost her mind, started talking about my future, about the gallery internship I'd been offered, about how a baby would ruin everything. She said you'd trap me, that you'd use the pregnancy to keep me poor and struggling, just like my father had done to her. That's insane, Ethan managed. I would never. I know. I knew it then too. But she wouldn't listen. She just kept pushing and pushing, and then my father got involved, and they presented it like this unified front. They had it all planned out. I'd move back home temporarily. They'd help me handle it. Then I could go to the internship, start my career, live the life they'd always envisioned for me. Lena's laugh was bitter. They made it sound so reasonable, so logical. And I was 21 and scared, and they were my parents, and I thought maybe they were right. Maybe keeping the baby would be selfish. Maybe I wasn't ready. So you left. The words felt like glass in his throat. Without telling me. Without giving me a choice. I convinced myself I was protecting you. That you'd try to talk me into keeping it, and then we'd both end up miserable and resentful. That it was better to just go. She finally looked at him, tears streaming down her face. I was a coward, Ethan. I was scared and weak, and I let my parents manipulate me, and I broke both our hearts because I didn't have the courage to fight for what we had. Ethan felt like he'd been hollowed out. What happened with the pregnancy? Lena's face crumpled. I lost the baby. 12 weeks. I was living with my parents, and I woke up one morning and there was blood, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking. The doctor said it was a miscarriage. Natural, they called it. Like there was anything natural about losing something you'd only just started to want. Oh God, Lena. My mother said it was for the best, that it was a sign I'd made the right choice, but all I could think was that I'd left you for nothing. I'd destroyed our relationship, and I didn't even have the baby to show for it. Just nothing. Emptiness. She wiped at her face with shaking hands. I couldn't come back after that. How could I? What would I even say? Sorry I disappeared. Sorry I was pregnant. Sorry I lost our baby that you never knew existed. It felt impossible, so I just moved forward, took the internship, threw myself into work, built walls so high that nothing could hurt me again. The library was silent except for Lena's ragged breathing and the distant sound of rain against windows. Ethan stood frozen, trying to process information that rearranged his entire understanding of the past decade. She'd been pregnant. She'd lost their baby. She'd carried that grief alone while he'd been angry at her for leaving, never knowing the truth. You should have told me, he said finally, his voice rough. When you found out you were pregnant, you should have told me. We could have figured it out together. I know. I would have done anything. Quit my apprenticeship, gotten 2 jobs, whatever it took. We could have made it work. I know, she repeated, tears still falling. I know that now, but I was 21 and terrified, and my parents had spent my whole life teaching me that love wasn't enough, that practical considerations always trumped emotion, and I believed them. I let them convince me that protecting my future meant destroying our present, and by the time I realized how wrong I was, it was too late. Ethan ran both hands through his hair, needing to move, to do something with the energy churning through him. Anger and grief and loss all tangled together until he couldn't tell them apart. I had a child. For 4 weeks I had a child, and I didn't even know. I'm so sorry. Lena's voice broke. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I've regretted it every single day. Every choice I made, every word I didn't say. It's haunted me for 10 years. Is that why you're here? At this school? He gestured at the library, at the books she'd so carefully selected. Some kind of penance. Maybe. Partly. She sank back into her chair, exhausted. After I built Meridian, after I had more money than I knew what to do with, I realized it didn't mean anything. I was successful and miserable, surrounded by people who wanted things from me but didn't actually know me. So I started volunteering. First at a food bank, then at a literacy program. Someone mentioned this school needed reading volunteers, and I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe being around kids would help, that maybe I could give something good to children even though I'd lost my own chance. And you had no idea Mia was mine. None. I swear, Ethan, when I met her, she was just this bright, curious little girl who loved stories. She reminded me of... Lena stopped, then continued softly. She reminded me of what our daughter might have been like. If I'd been braver, if I'd made different choices. Our daughter. The words settled into Ethan's chest like stones. He'd never let himself think about kids much after Sarah died, too focused on raising Mia to imagine expanding their little family. But hearing Lena say it, hearing that alternative history spoken aloud, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Mia. She's 7. Her mother, Sarah, died in a car accident when Mia was 8 months old. Lena looked up, fresh pain crossing her features. Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. Sarah was good, kind. It wasn't the same as what we had, but she was a good mother, and she deserved better than dying on a random Tuesday because some guy ran a red light. He met Lena's eyes. I've been raising Mia alone for 6 years. And it's hard, and I'm tired, and half the time I feel like I'm failing, but she's the best thing in my life, the only thing that makes sense. She's wonderful, Lena said softly. You've done an amazing job with her. She loves you. The words came out harder than he intended. In 3 months, you've become one of her favorite people. She talks about you constantly, about the books you bring, the things you say, the way you make her feel smart and capable. He paused, the next words difficult. And I don't know what to do with that, Lena.
Because part of me is grateful that she has another adult in her life who cares about her. But part of me is terrified that you're going to leave again, and it's going to break her heart. I won't. You can't promise that. Ethan cut her off. You can't promise you'll stay, because life happens and circumstances change and people leave. I know that better than anyone. Lena stood again, moving around the table toward him. You're right. I can't promise the future. None of us can. But Ethan, I can promise that I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not going to run because things get difficult. I'm not going to let other people make my decisions for me. And I'm not going to hurt Mia or you. Not deliberately. Not again. How do I trust that? The question came out raw. How do I trust you when you've already proven you can disappear? I don't know. She was close now, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes, the faint freckles across her nose that makeup usually hid. I don't have a good answer for that except to say that I'm asking for a chance to prove it. Not for my sake, for Mia's. Because she deserves to have people in her life who show up, who care, who make her feel valued. And if you'll let me, I want to be one of those people. And what about us? The question escaped before Ethan could stop it. What about the fact that I can barely look at you without feeling like I'm 23 again and the world still makes sense? Lena's breath caught. Ethan, I'm not saying I want to. I don't even know what I'm saying. He stepped back, needing distance. But we can't pretend there's nothing here. That seeing you again didn't crack open things I thought I'd buried. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I feel it too. Before either of them could say more, voices echoed down the hallway. Kids being released from classrooms, the chaos of dismissal beginning. Reality crashed back in, reminding them where they were and why. The reading group, Lena said, already moving to straighten the books on the table, to compose herself. The kids will be here in a few minutes. Yeah. Ethan checked his phone, surprised to find they'd been talking for nearly 40 minutes. I'll wait in the parking lot, pick up Mia after. Ethan? Lena's voice stopped him at the door. Thank you for listening, for not just walking away. He looked back at her, this woman who'd once been everything to him and who'd just revealed a truth that changed his entire understanding of their history. I'm still angry, he said honestly, and hurt and confused. But you're right about one thing. Mia deserves stability. So we figure out how to make this work. For her. For her, Lena agreed softly. As Ethan walked back through the hallways, past cheerful bulletin boards and student artwork, his mind spun with everything he'd just learned. A baby. They'd almost had a baby together. And Lena had carried that loss alone for 10 years, building an empire out of grief and regret while he'd moved through his own life, never knowing. The rain had stopped by the time he reached his truck, leaving the parking lot slick and gleaming. He sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine, just breathing, processing, trying to reconcile the anger that still burned in his chest with the complicated sympathy he felt for what Lena had endured. She'd made the wrong choice, had been weak when she should have been strong, had let her parents control her when she should have fought for them. But she'd also been 21 and scared and alone, and she'd paid for those choices with a decade of regret and a loss that had clearly shaped everything that came after. Did that excuse what she'd done? No. But it explained it. And maybe, Ethan thought, maybe understanding was the first step toward something else. He didn't know what yet, couldn't imagine it. But Mia loved Lena, and Lena clearly cared about Mia, and somewhere in that truth there had to be a path forward. His phone buzzed, a text from Martinez. How'd it go? Ethan stared at the question for a long moment before typing back. Complicated just became a lot more complicated. The response was immediate. Need a beer? Rain check. Need to think. Thinking is overrated. But I got you when you're ready. Ethan smiled despite everything. Good friends were hard to find, and Martinez had proven himself time and again as exactly that. Someone who showed up without judgment, who offered support without demanding explanations. The school doors opened and kids began streaming out, parents collecting them in cars or walking them toward buses. Ethan watched them all, these children with their backpacks and lunchboxes and uncomplicated lives, and wondered what his own child would have been like. A girl? A boy? Would they have had Lena's green eyes or his brown ones? Would they have loved books like Mia did, or been drawn to something else entirely? The questions were pointless, he knew. The baby was gone, had been gone for 10 years, but knowing about the loss changed something fundamental in him, added another layer of grief to a life that had already contained more than its share. Then Mia appeared, backpack bouncing, Lena walking beside her. They were talking animatedly about something, Mia's hands gesturing wildly, while Lena listened with a smile that looked both genuine and sad. When they reached his truck, Mia's face lit up. "Dad!" Ms. Hart finished the dragon chapter. And guess what? The dragon wasn't even evil. It was just protecting its babies. Isn't that cool? Very cool, baby. Ethan's eyes met Lena's over Mia's head, and something unspoken passed between them. Grief and understanding and a tentative agreement to try. "Thank you for the story, Ms. Hart," Mia said, giving Lena an impulsive hug that clearly surprised them both. "You're very welcome, Mia." Lena returned the hug carefully, like she was holding something precious and breakable. "I'll see you Thursday?" "Definitely. We're starting the new book about the girl detective, right?" "Right." Lena straightened, releasing Mia but keeping one hand on her shoulder for just a moment longer. "Have a good week." As Mia climbed into the truck, chattering about dragons and baby protection and how she wanted to write her own dragon story, Ethan lingered for just a moment. "Thursday," he said to Lena. "We should talk more. After the reading session, maybe—" "Coffee?" Hope and fear warred on Lena's face before she nodded. "Coffee, I'd like that." "Just talking," Ethan clarified. "For Mia. So we can figure out how to handle this." "Just talking," Lena agreed, but something in her eyes suggested she understood what he couldn't quite say, that this was a beginning, tentative and fragile, but a beginning nonetheless. As Ethan drove home, Mia's voice filling the truck cab with enthusiasm about fictional dragons and real reading groups, he realized something that both terrified and steadied him. He was going to have to learn how to forgive Lena. Not for her sake, though she clearly carried enough guilt for both of them, but for his own sake, for Mia's sake. Because holding on to anger and hurt was exhausting, and he'd been tired for so long already. Forgiveness wouldn't come easy, wouldn't come fast, and it wouldn't erase what had happened or make the past decade of not knowing any less painful. But maybe, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, he could find his way towards something that looked like understanding, and from understanding, who knew what else might grow. "Dad, you're being quiet again," Mia observed from the passenger seat. "Are you thinking about Ms. Hart?" "Yeah, baby, I am." "Do you like her? Like grown-up like?" Ethan glanced at his daughter, surprised by her perceptiveness. "It's complicated." "That's what you always say. But Ms. Hart is really nice, and she makes you smile different, not your regular smile. A different one." Mia tilted her head, considering. "Maybe complicated is okay. Mrs. Patterson says some of the best things in life are complicated, like fractions." Despite everything, the grief, the anger, the weight of revelation still settling in his chest, Ethan laughed. Did she really compare relationships to fractions? No, I did. But it makes sense, right? You have to find common denominators and stuff. You're too smart for 7. "I know," Mia said matter-of-factly. "It's a blessing and a curse. That's what Ms. Hart says about being smart. That it helps you understand things, but sometimes you understand things you wish you didn't." The wisdom of that observation, coming from his 7-year-old quoting the woman who'd just revealed a decade-old secret, made Ethan's throat tight. "Ms. Hart sounds pretty wise." "She is, and sad sometimes. I can tell. She gets this look, like she's remembering something that hurts. But then she sees me looking, and she smiles, and it's okay again." Mia paused. "Do you think you could help her not be sad, since you're old friends?" "I don't know if it works that way, sweetheart." "It might. You make me not sad when I'm sad. Maybe you could do that for Ms. Hart, too." Ethan reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand, overwhelmed by her capacity for empathy and hope. "Maybe," he said softly. "Maybe I could try." The coffee shop Lena chose was one of those places that tried too hard to be trendy. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, a chalkboard menu written in unnecessarily elaborate script. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early and immediately felt out of place in his work clothes, still carrying the smell of sawdust despite having washed his hands twice. The other patrons looked like they belonged here, with their laptops and designer coffee and casual confidence that came from never having to worry about whether a $12 latte was a justifiable expense. He ordered regular coffee, black, no fancy additions, and claimed a table in the corner where he could see the door. His phone showed 4:47 p.m. Lena would be here in 13 minutes, assuming she came at all. Part of him had expected a text canceling, some corporate emergency that would give her an excuse to avoid this conversation. But at exactly 5 o'clock, she walked through the door. She changed since the library, traded the casual sweater for something more professional, a cream-colored blouse and dark slacks that screamed expensive even to Ethan's untrained eye. Her hair was pulled back again, makeup reapplied, the armor back in place. She looked like someone about to negotiate a business deal, not have coffee with the man whose heart she'd broken a decade ago. Their eyes met across the coffee shop, and Ethan watched her take a breath, steeling herself before heading to the counter. She ordered something complicated. He caught the words oat milk and extra shot, then joined him at the table, setting down her cup with hands that weren't quite steady. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, because someone had to speak first. "Thank you for asking." Lena wrapped both hands around her cup like she needed the warmth. "I wasn't sure you would. After everything." "I wasn't sure either." He studied her face, looking for traces of the girl he'd known beneath the polished exterior. "But we need to talk, really talk. Not just emergency confessions in a school library, but actual conversation about what happens now." "I agree." She met his eyes, and he saw the exhaustion there, the emotional toll of the past week. "Where do you want to start?" "Start with why you didn't tell me." The question came out more forcefully than he intended. "Not why you left. I think I understand that now, even if I don't agree with it. But why, in 3 months of volunteering at Mia's school, you never mentioned that we had history? You had to have seen my name on her school records. Cole isn't that common." Lena flinched. "I did see your name. The second week I was volunteering, Mrs. Patterson mentioned Mia's father worked construction, was raising her alone, always came to school events even when he was exhausted from work, and I hoped it was a different Ethan Cole, because the alternative was too complicated, too painful. But you knew it was me." "I suspected, strongly, but I told myself it couldn't be because what were the odds? And then when Mia talked about you, about things you did together, I recognized your patterns, the way you make silly voices when reading, the way you always validate her feelings before offering solutions, the way you show up, no matter what." She paused, her voice dropping. "I knew it was you. And I should have said something, should have told you or stopped volunteering, but I couldn't. Being with Mia, seeing this piece of what our life might have been like. I was selfish, Ethan. I wanted to be close to something real, even if I had no right to it. You had 3 months to tell me." His frustration bled through despite his best efforts to stay calm. 3 months of working with my daughter while I had no idea who you were. Do you understand how that feels? Like you were spying on my life, seeing all my struggles and failures while I was completely in the dark. I know. And I'm sorry. I was a coward. Again. She looked down at her coffee, her composure cracking. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I told myself I'd find a way to tell you. I'd work up the courage to leave a note with the office, to ask for your contact information, to do something. But then I'd see Mia, and she'd be so happy, and I'd think, what right do I have to disrupt their lives? What good would it do to drag up the past? That wasn't your decision to make alone, Ethan said quietly. Just like 10 years ago, you made a choice that affected both of us without giving me any say in it. The words landed like a physical blow. Lena's eyes glistened with tears she was clearly fighting to hold back. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I don't know how to fix that pattern, Ethan. I don't know how to stop making unilateral decisions when I'm scared. You start by talking to me, by trusting that I can handle difficult information instead of protecting me from it. He leaned forward, needing her to really hear this. Lena, I've buried a wife. I'm raising a daughter alone on a construction worker's salary. I deal with difficult every single day.
What I can't deal with is being kept in the dark by someone I'm supposed to trust. I understand. She wiped at her eyes, smearing mascara slightly. What do you need from me? To make this right? I need honesty, complete honesty. No more secrets, no more strategic omissions, no more deciding what I can or can't handle. He paused, considering his next words carefully. And I need to understand why you're really here, Lena. Why volunteer at that specific school? You're a CEO of a development company worth millions. You could donate money, put your name on a building, do charity work that comes with recognition and prestige. Instead, you're reading to second graders on Tuesday afternoons. Why? Lena was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it held answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw. After I lost the baby, after I pushed through the grief by building my career, I ended up with everything I was supposed to want: money, power, respect, success. And I was miserable. Completely, utterly miserable. I'd wake up in my penthouse apartment with a view of the entire city, and I'd feel nothing. Just this vast emptiness where a life should be. She looked up, meeting his eyes. So I started volunteering. First at a hospital, but that was too close to the loss I'd experienced. Then at a food bank, which helped but felt impersonal. Then someone mentioned this school literacy program, and I thought, maybe I could do something meaningful. Maybe I could give to children what I'd lost the chance to give my own child. And then you met Mia. And then I met Mia, she confirmed softly. This brilliant, funny, kind little girl who reminded me so much of what I'd imagined our daughter would be like. She had your eyes, Ethan, your expressions, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. She does that. And I knew I should walk away, should request a different school, but I couldn't. Being with her felt like being close to something I'd destroyed. Like maybe I could give her something good even though I'd failed so catastrophically with you. You didn't fail with me. The words surprised Ethan even as he said them. You made a terrible choice based on fear and manipulation. But you were 21, Lena. 21 and pregnant and being pressured by people who were supposed to protect you. I'm angry about what happened, but I'm not going to let you carry all the blame for it. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. How are you so kind? After everything I did, how can you sit here and offer me grace? Because I loved you, Ethan said simply. I loved you so much that it nearly destroyed me when you left. And some part of me... He stopped, surprised by the truth emerging. Some part of me never stopped wondering what happened to you, whether you were happy, whether you ever thought about us. So yeah, I'm angry. But I'm also relieved to finally know the truth, even though it hurts like hell. Do you hate me? The question was whispered, terrified. No, I wish I did. It would be simpler. He took a drink of his coffee, which had gone lukewarm. But I don't hate you, Lena. I hate what happened. I hate that we lost 10 years. I hate that our baby... His voice cracked. I hate that I never got to know our baby existed. But you? I don't hate you. What do you feel? She was leaning forward now, desperate to understand. When you look at me, what do you feel? Ethan considered the question seriously, looking at the woman across from him. She was beautiful still, though different, sharper edges, more guarded, carrying visible weight of years of isolation and regret. But underneath the corporate polish, he could still see traces of the girl who'd made him mix CDs and dragged him to art museums and believed they could build a life on love and ramen noodles. I feel confused, he admitted, angry and hurt and grieving something I never knew existed, but also, he paused, making sure he meant the words before speaking them. Also curious about who you've become. About whether there's any chance of building something new from the wreckage of what we lost. Hope flared in Lena's face, almost painful in its intensity. Do you think there could be? A chance? I don't know, maybe. But Lena, it can't be like before. We're not kids anymore. We have responsibilities, histories, complications. And Mia... He stopped, the most important piece clicking into place. Mia changes everything. If we explore this, if we try to see if there's something here worth pursuing, she's part of that equation. I won't let her get attached to you just to have you disappear again if things get hard. I wouldn't do that to her. I swear, Ethan, I would never... You can't promise that. He cut her off,
needing her to understand. You can't promise you won't run because you've already proven you're capable of it. So if we do this, if we try, we go slow, carefully. And the first time you feel like bolting, the first time things get difficult and your instinct is to disappear, you come to me first. You tell me what you're feeling instead of just vanishing. That's non-negotiable. Okay, she nodded emphatically. Yes, I can do that. I want to do that. And you keep volunteering with Mia, not because of us, but because she genuinely loves those reading sessions. She talks about them all week. I won't take that away from her because of adult complications. Of course, I would never want to stop working with her. Lena reached across the table tentatively, and Ethan let her take his hand. Her fingers were cold despite the coffee. What else? What other ground rules do we need? Honesty? Complete, maybe painful honesty. If you're struggling, you tell me. If you're having doubts, you tell me. If your parents or anyone else tries to interfere in your life or our relationship, you tell me. He squeezed her hand. I can handle difficult truths, Lena. What I can't handle is being blindsided again. I promise. No more secrets, no more omissions, even when the truth is hard. She took a shaky breath. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think you could ever forgive me? Really, truly forgive me for leaving, for not telling you about the baby, for all of it? Ethan considered this, the biggest question between them. Forgiveness wasn't simple, wasn't a switch he could flip. It was a process, something built through time and demonstrated change and rebuilt trust. I think so, he said finally. But not today. Not next week. Forgiveness is something I have to grow into, and you have to earn. But if you show me you've changed, if you prove you can communicate instead of running, if you're patient with my anger and hurt, then yeah, I think eventually I could forgive you, maybe even understand why you made the choices you made. That's more than I deserve. Maybe. But it's what I'm offering. He released her hand, sitting back. So here's what I'm thinking. We start with friendship. We get to know each other again, as the people we are now, not who we were. We have coffee, we talk, we figure out if there's anything real here beyond nostalgia and what-ifs. And Mia? For now, you're still Ms. Hart, the reading volunteer she adores. We don't tell her about our history until we know where this is going. I won't confuse her with adult complications she doesn't need to carry. He paused. Is that okay with you? Moving slowly, keeping things simple with Mia? Yes, absolutely. Lena's relief was palpable. I don't want to confuse her either, or hurt her. Her voice caught. She's so special, Ethan. You've raised an incredible human being. She is special, and she's the most important thing in my life. So you need to understand, if at any point I think our situation is harmful to her, I'll end it, no matter what's happening between us. She comes first, always. As she should, Lena's voice was firm. I would expect nothing less. And Ethan? I would never want to come between you and Mia. Never. If anything, I want to support what you've built with her. She deserves all the love and stability in the world. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around them. Around them, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm. Baristas calling out orders, students typing on laptops, couples on dates who probably didn't carry a decade of baggage between them. Tell me about Sarah, Lena said quietly. If you're comfortable. I'd like to know about Mia's mother. The request surprised Ethan, but it felt right somehow. If they were going to build something real, it had to include all of who they'd become, including the people who'd shaped them in the intervening years. Sarah was good, he started, choosing his words carefully. Kind, patient, grounded. We met 3 years after you left at a friend's barbecue. I wasn't looking for anything serious. Honestly, I was still pretty messed up about you disappearing. But Sarah was persistent in the gentlest way. She just kept showing up, kept being present, until one day I realized I was happy when I was with her. Did you love her? Yeah. Not the same way I loved you. It was quieter, more comfortable. But it was real. He paused, old grief surfacing. We got pregnant unexpectedly. Neither of us was ready, but Sarah was excited. Said maybe the universe was telling us something. We got married at City Hall, moved into a tiny apartment, started planning for this baby. And then? Lena prompted gently. And then Mia arrived, and she was perfect. Sarah was amazing with her, natural, nurturing, exactly what a new mother should be. We were exhausted and broke and happier than I'd been in years. His voice roughened. Then Mia was 8 months old, and Sarah went to the grocery store. Some guy ran a red light, T-boned her driver's side. She died before the ambulance arrived. Oh, Ethan. Lena's hand found his again, and this time he gripped it tightly. I was 27, with an 8-month-old, and no idea how to function without Sarah. Her parents wanted to take Mia, said I couldn't handle raising a baby alone. But I fought for her, got a lawyer, proved I was capable, won custody. And I've been raising her ever since, trying to be enough, even though most days I'm terrified I'm failing. You're not failing, Lena said fiercely. Ethan, Mia is confident and kind and curious and so clearly loved. You've given her an incredible foundation. I'm trying. Every day I'm just trying. He met her eyes. And that's why I need you to understand what's at stake here. Mia's already lost one mother. I won't let her lose another. You won't, Lena promised. I'm here, Ethan. I'm staying. And I know you have no reason to believe that after what I did before, but I'm going to prove it to you. Every day I'm going to show up and prove it. Then prove it. The challenge was gentle but real. Show me you can do ordinary. Show me you can exist in my world without trying to fix it with your money or corporate power. Show me you can be Lena, not CEO Hart. What does that look like? It looks like this. Coffee shop conversations. Maybe dinner sometime. Somewhere that doesn't require a reservation 3 weeks in advance. Walking through the park. Normal, everyday things that don't come with price tags or prestige. He paused. Can you do that? Can you be ordinary with me? A smile broke through Lena's tears, genuine and warm. I would love nothing more than to be ordinary with you. They finished their coffee talking about smaller things. Mia's upcoming school play, the Martinez project's progress, Lena's plans for gradually stepping back from daily operations at Meridian. The conversation felt easier now, less weighted with decade-old grief, more focused on the present and tentative future. When they finally stood to leave, the sun was setting, painting the coffee shop windows in shades of orange and gold. Ethan walked Lena to her car, a sleek BMW that probably cost more than he made in 2 years, and felt the gap between their worlds yawn wide again. This is going to be complicated, Lena said, echoing his thoughts. Our lives are so different now. Yeah, but maybe that's okay. Maybe different doesn't have to mean impossible. He touched her face gently, and she leaned into the contact like she was starving for it. Go home, Lena. Think about whether you really want this, whether you can handle the reality of my life versus the romanticized version you might be imagining. I don't need to think about it. I already know. Think anyway. Sleep on it. Then text me tomorrow and tell me if you're still in. He dropped his hand. Because once we start this, once we try for real, I need you committed. Not halfway, not when it's convenient. Fully in. I understand. She unlocked her car but didn't get in yet. Ethan, thank you. For listening, for being willing to try, for not just writing me off completely. I know I don't deserve your grace, but I'm grateful for it anyway. You deserve a chance to prove you've changed, he said. Everyone deserves that. Now go, before I start overthinking this and talk myself out of it. She smiled, sad and hopeful in equal measure, and got into her car. Ethan watched her drive away, then stood in the parking lot for a long moment, trying to process everything that had just happened. He just agreed to try building something with the woman who'd shattered him a decade ago. The woman who'd been pregnant with his child and never told him. The woman who'd built an empire while he'd been raising a daughter and trying to survive. It was insane. It was complicated. It was probably a terrible idea. But as Ethan drove home through the evening traffic, he couldn't shake the memory of Lena's face when she'd talked about Mia. The genuine love and wonder there. The way she'd promised to show up, to be present, to choose vulnerability over armor. Maybe people could change. Maybe forgiveness was possible. Maybe, just maybe, second chances were worth the risk. His phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Martinez. How'd it go? Ethan typed back. We're trying. Slowly, carefully. We'll see. That's all you can do, brother. Hope it works out. Me too. When he got home, Mia was exactly where he'd left her, at the kitchen table working on homework with Mrs. Chen from next door, who'd agreed to watch her for an hour. "Dad!" Mia launched herself at him, wrapping arms around his waist. "You're back! Did you have a good meeting?" "Yeah, baby. It was good." He hugged her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "How was homework?" "Terrible. Math is the worst. But Mrs. Chen helped me, so I only cried a little bit." "I didn't see any tears," Mrs. Chen said diplomatically, gathering her things. "She did very well, actually. Smart girl, your daughter." "She gets that from her mother," Ethan said, making Mia beam with pride. After Mrs. Chen left, Ethan made dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, comfort food that required minimal effort, and listened to Mia talk about her day. She'd gotten an A on her spelling test. Tommy Hernandez had gotten in trouble for pulling Jenny Martinez's hair. The class hamster had escaped and been found in the art supply closet, eating construction paper. Normal, ordinary, beautiful life. This was what mattered. This was what he was protecting. Later, after Mia was bathed and in bed, Ethan sat on her floor reading her bedtime story. Tonight's selection was about a girl who befriended a dragon, and felt the weight of the day catch up with him. "Dad?" Mia interrupted his reading. "Is Ms. Hart okay?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "She seemed sad on Thursday, when you came to pick me up, like something was wrong." Mia's perceptiveness struck again, cutting right to complicated truths. "Did something bad happen?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "Miss Hart and I had some things we needed to talk about. Grown-up stuff from a long time ago, but we talked, and we're working through it." "Are you friends again?" "We're trying to be, yeah." "Good." Mia snuggled deeper into her blankets. "I like Ms. Hart. She's nice to me, and she brings really good books, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid just because I'm 7. I hope you guys are friends for real." "Me too, baby." He kissed her forehead. "Now sleep. You've got school tomorrow, and Mrs. Patterson will not appreciate a sleepy student." "Mrs. Patterson doesn't appreciate anything," Mia grumbled, making Ethan laugh. After she drifted off, he stayed on her floor for a while, just watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so trusting that the adults in her life would protect her and make good choices. The responsibility of that trust was crushing sometimes. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. "I thought about it. I'm still in, fully committed." "Whatever it takes, Ethan. I want to try." He stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Okay, let's try. Coffee next week? Same place? I'd love that. Thank you for believing I can change. Don't thank me yet. Show me." "I will." Ethan set down his phone and checked on Mia one more time before heading to his own room. Tomorrow would bring new complications, new challenges, new opportunities to either heal or hurt. But tonight, he let himself feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Fragile and tentative, but real. Maybe this would work. Maybe Lena really had changed. Maybe they could build something new from the ashes of what they'd lost. Or maybe it would all fall apart, and he'd be left picking up pieces again. Either way, he was willing to find out. For himself, for the closure he'd never gotten, and maybe, just maybe, for the possibility of something more. In the next room, Mia mumbled something in her sleep about dragons and friendship, and Ethan smiled, thinking that maybe his daughter understood more about second chances than all the adults combined. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was try again, even when you'd been hurt before. Sometimes hope was worth the risk. He just had to trust that this time the story would end differently. The silence in Ethan's truck felt heavier than it should have as he drove away from Lena's building. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles white against the worn leather, and his mind kept replaying the conversation that had just shattered any fragile piece they'd managed to build over the past few weeks. The project. The money. The power dynamics he'd been trying to ignore suddenly thrown into sharp relief by one corporate decision that had torpedoed everything. He'd known, logically, that Lena ran a development company. He'd seen the buildings, read the articles, understood that she operated in a world of millions and influence. But knowing it academically was different from watching her pull funding from a project that employed 24 men, including him, just to prove some kind of point about protecting him. The worst part was that she'd done it thinking she was helping. thinking she was somehow making things right by removing herself from his professional life, not understanding that the removal itself was an act of power he could never match. She decided. She acted. And now he had to deal with the consequences. His phone rang. Martinez. Ethan answered on the second ring, not bothering with pleasantries. I know, Harrison already called. Then you know we're scrambling. Martinez's voice was tight with stress. The other investors are spooked. They're talking about pulling out too. We might lose the whole damn project, Cole. I know. What I don't know is why Meridian suddenly decided to back out. Harrison said something about creative differences, but that's corporate speak for something else entirely. A pause, weighted with meaning. This have anything to do with your complicated family situation? Ethan closed his eyes briefly, navigating traffic on autopilot. Yeah. Jesus, Cole, what happened? He stopped. Because how did he explain this? How did he tell Martinez that the woman funding their project was his ex-girlfriend who'd gotten pregnant a decade ago and disappeared, who'd come back into his life as a volunteer at his daughter's school, and who'd just pulled millions in funding because she thought she was protecting him? She made a decision without consulting me, thought she was helping, ended up making everything worse. Women, Martinez muttered, but there was understanding in his voice rather than judgment. Can you fix it? I don't know, maybe. I need to think. Think fast. Harrison's giving us 48 hours to find replacement funding or the whole thing collapses. That's 24 jobs, Cole. Families depending on those paychecks. Martinez's voice softened. Including yours. I know you've got Mia to think about. The reminder hit Ethan squarely in the chest. Mia, summer camp, the new washing machine. The dental work she'd need for her crooked front teeth. The college fund he contributed to every month even when money was tight. All of it depended on steady employment, on projects that didn't implode because of decade-old relationship drama. I'll handle it, Ethan said, with more confidence than he felt. You sure? Because if you need backup, I'm sure. Give me 24 hours. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number, one he'd programmed into his phone 3 weeks ago after their coffee shop conversation, but had never actually used. It rang 4 times before Lena answered, her voice cautious. Ethan? We need to talk. In person. Tonight. I don't think that's a good idea right now. You're upset, and I understand why. But, Lena, you just cost 24 men their jobs. You tanked a project that families are depending on. So yeah, I'm upset, but this isn't about us anymore. This is about you using your money and power to make unilateral decisions that affect people's lives. He pulled into his apartment complex, parking with more force than necessary. My place. 8 o'clock. We're fixing this. Ethan, I can't just reinstate the funding. The board meeting is, find a way. His voice came out harder than he intended. You created this mess. You're going to help me clean it up. 8 o'clock, Lena. Don't make me come find you. He hung up before she could respond, already regretting the harshness but unable to take it back. His anger wasn't just about the project, he realized. It was about the presumption behind her decision, the idea that she could swoop in and rearrange his life without his input, just like she'd done 10 years ago when she'd left without telling him why. The apartment was quiet when he entered. Mia was at her friend Sophie's house for a play date, giving Ethan a few hours to handle this situation before she came home full of questions he didn't know how to answer. He paced the small living room, trying to organize his thoughts into something coherent, something that didn't sound like rage and hurt and fear all tangled together. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. I'll be there. And Ethan, I'm sorry. I was trying to protect you. He didn't respond. Protection implied he was something fragile that needed guarding, and that rankled more than he wanted to admit. He didn't need protection. He needed respect. He needed to be consulted about decisions that affected his life. He needed to be treated like an equal partner in whatever this complicated thing between them was becoming, not like a project to be managed. The hours until 8 o'clock crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan showered, changed into clean clothes, made himself eat something even though his stomach was in knots. He picked up Mia from Sophie's house, fielded her cheerful questions about dinner and homework, helped her with a math worksheet while his mind was entirely elsewhere. By the time he'd gotten her settled in bed with a book, it was 7:45, and his nerves felt like live wires. The knock came at exactly 8 o'clock. Lena stood in his doorway wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, makeup minimal. She looked exhausted and scared, nothing like the polished CEO from their confrontation earlier. "Come in," Ethan said, stepping aside. She entered carefully, taking in his apartment with quick, assessing glances. He saw her notice the worn furniture, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, Mia's artwork covering the refrigerator. Saw her see, really see, the life he'd built on a construction worker's salary, modest and careful, and nothing like her world of luxury and excess. "Is Mia asleep?" Lena asked quietly. "Reading in her room, she knows you're coming, thinks we're having a grown-up conversation about her reading progress." He gestured to the small couch. "Sit." Lena sat, and Ethan took the chair across from her, needing the physical distance to maintain his composure. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like humidity before a storm. "I shouldn't have pulled the funding," Lena said finally. "I know that now. I panicked, and I made a rash decision, and I hurt people who had nothing to do with our situation. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't put food on tables, Lena. Sorry doesn't pay mortgages or keep kids in school." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Do you have any idea what you did? Martinez called me. The other investors are spooked. They're talking about pulling out too. If this project collapses, that's 24 families without income. In this economy, right before the holidays." She flinched. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't. You just acted. Just like you did 10 years ago when you left without telling me you were pregnant. You made a decision that affected both of us, and you didn't give me a voice in it." His voice was rising, anger bleeding through despite his best efforts. "Do you see the pattern, Lena? Do you see how you keep doing this? That's not fair." Her own anger sparked now, defensive. 10 years ago, I was 21 and terrified. This time, I was trying to remove a conflict of interest. I thought if I wasn't financially connected to your work, it would make things cleaner between us." "Cleaner?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "You think destroying my livelihood makes things cleaner? You think putting my coworkers out of work is somehow protecting me? I thought you'd understand." Lena's hands twisted in her lap. "I thought you'd see that I was trying to level the playing field, to remove the power imbalance. By using your power to make unilateral decisions, that's not leveling anything, Lena. That's just exercising control in a different way." He stood, needing to move, to do something with the energy coursing through him. "You want to know what would level the playing field? Asking me, talking to me before you made a decision that affects my life, treating me like an equal instead of someone who needs managing. I do see you as an equal. Then act like it." The words came out louder than he intended, and he immediately lowered his voice, conscious of Mia in the next room. "Act like it, Lena. Stop making decisions for me and start making them with me. That's what equals do. That's what partners do." "Partners?" She looked up at him, something vulnerable flickering across her face. "Is that what we are?" The question hung between them, impossible to answer simply. Were they partners? They were something. Connected by history and loss, and a daughter who loved them both. Connected by attraction that hadn't dimmed despite everything. Connected by wounds they'd inflicted on each other and were now trying to navigate around. "I don't know what we are," Ethan admitted, sinking back into his chair. "But I know what we can't be. We can't be people who make decisions in isolation and expect the other to just accept them. That's not sustainable. That's not healthy. And it's not fair to Mia, who's watching us figure this out." Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're right about all of it. I did the same thing I did 10 years ago. I made a choice based on fear and didn't consider how it would affect you. I just wanted to fix the awkwardness of you working on a project I'm funding. I wanted to remove that complication from our lives." "Life is complicated, Lena. You can't just throw money at complications and make them disappear." He paused, softening slightly. "Look, I understand the instinct. I get that you were trying to help in your own way. But your help is costing people their jobs, so we need to fix this, together."
The board meeting is tomorrow afternoon. I could propose reinstating the funding, but I'd need a good reason. Something that explains the reversal without making me look incompetent or erratic. She met his eyes. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth, that you made a hasty decision based on personal concerns, but after further review, the project is solid and Meridian's investment is sound. Tell them you were wrong. He held her gaze. Can you do that? Can you admit you made a mistake in front of your board? Lena swallowed hard. It'll make me look weak. In business, admitting mistakes is dangerous. It makes people question your judgment, your fitness to lead. And in life, not admitting mistakes is lonely. It makes people question whether you're capable of growth, of change, of being vulnerable enough to build real connections. Ethan's voice gentled. You can't have it both ways, Lena. You can't be the invulnerable CEO in the boardroom and expect to have authentic relationships outside of it. At some point, you have to choose which matters more. She was quiet for a long time, processing. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I'm scared of being vulnerable, of admitting I'm wrong. My whole career has been built on projecting certainty, on making people believe I always know the right answer. If I start showing weakness, it's not weakness. It's humanity. Ethan leaned forward. And honestly, I think people would respect you more for it. I know I would. Would you? The question was almost hopeful. Respect me more? Lena, I've never stopped respecting you. Even when I was furious at you for leaving, even when I didn't understand why, I always knew you were brilliant and capable and strong. What I couldn't figure out was whether you were also human, whether underneath all that armor, there was still the girl I fell in love with, the one who cried at sad movies and made terrible puns and wasn't afraid to admit when she was scared. He paused. Show me that girl exists. Show me you can be wrong and survive it. A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. What if I can't fix this? What if the board won't let me reinstate the funding? Then we find another way, together. But Lena, you have to try. For those families, for the men who are depending on that work, for... He stopped, the next words harder than he expected. For us. Because if we're going to figure out what this is between us, I need to know you can meet me halfway. That you can be vulnerable and wrong and human, not just powerful and perfect and untouchable. I'm not perfect, she whispered. I'm so far from perfect, it's almost funny. I'm terrified all the time that people will figure out I'm making it up as I go, that I don't have all the answers, that I'm just as lost as everyone else. Good. Ethan's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because perfect is boring, and I've never been interested in boring. Lena laughed through her tears, the sound watery but genuine. Is this the part where we hug and everything's magically fixed? No. This is the part where you go home, prepare for your board meeting, and figure out how to fix what you broke. Then, if you manage it, maybe we can talk about the next step. He stood, offering her his hand to pull her up from the couch. One crisis at a time, Lena. We're both too tired for more than that. She took his hand, and the contact sent electricity through him despite everything. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly, and he found himself holding on a moment longer than necessary before releasing her. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up on me, for giving me another chance. I'm not doing it for you, Ethan said honestly. I'm doing it for the guys at work who need their jobs, for Mia, who loves you, and maybe, a little bit, for the 23-year-old kid I used to be who never got closure. But Lena, this is your last chance. You don't get to make unilateral decisions that affect my life anymore. From now on, we talk. We decide together. Or we don't decide at all. I understand. She moved toward the door, then paused. Would it be okay if I said goodnight to Mia? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Keep it brief. She's supposed to be reading. He led Lena down the short hallway to Mia's room, where his daughter was sprawled across her bed with a book about dragons and brave knights. She looked up when they appeared in the doorway, her face brightening. Ms. Hart? Did you and Dad finish your grown-up conversation? We did, Lena said, her voice remarkably steady despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. I just wanted to say goodnight before I left. Are you okay? You look sad. Mia's perceptiveness struck again, cutting right to the heart of things. Did you and Dad fight? We had a disagreement, Lena admitted, moving into the room and sitting on the edge of Mia's bed. But we talked about it, and we're working on making it better. That's what people do when they care about each other. They work through disagreements. Like in my book, the knight and the dragon fight at first, but then they realize they both want to protect the village, so they become friends. Mia held up her book, showing the cover. Maybe you and Dad are like that. Fighting at first, but then you'll realize you both want the same thing.
Maybe, Lena said softly, smoothing back Mia's hair in a gesture so tender it made Ethan's chest ache. You're very wise, you know that? I know, Dad says I'm too smart for my age, but I think being smart is good, even when it's hard. Mia yawned, the late hour catching up with her. Are you coming to reading group on Thursday? I wouldn't miss it. Lena kissed Mia's forehead, a natural gesture that suggested she'd done it before, when Ethan wasn't there to see. Sleep well, sweetheart. You too, Ms. Hart, and don't be too sad about fighting with Dad. He's not good at staying mad. He always forgives people. Mia's eyes were already drifting closed. It's his superpower. Ethan and Lena exchanged a look over Mia's head, something complicated passing between them. Then Lena stood, carefully tucking Mia's blanket around her, and followed Ethan back to the living room. She's incredible, Lena said quietly, lingering by the door. You've raised an amazing human being. She's pretty great, Ethan agreed, and she likes you a lot, which is why you need to fix this, Lena. Not just for the project, but because if this falls apart and you disappear from her life, it'll hurt her. And I can't, his voice caught. I can't watch another person Mia loves disappear. I won't. I'm not disappearing. Lena said it with such fierce conviction that Ethan almost believed her. I told you before, I'm not running anymore. I'm staying. I'm fighting for this, for her, for... She stopped, whatever she'd been about to say dying on her lips. For what? Ethan prompted. For the chance to be part of something real, she finished quietly. For 10 years, I've built this empire out of grief and guilt, and none of it means anything. But Mia, you, this messy, complicated situation we're in, this feels real. This feels like it matters, and I'm not giving that up without a fight. Then fight for it. Ethan opened the door for her. Fight for those jobs tomorrow. Convince your board. Show me that you mean what you say. I will. She paused in the doorway close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something subtle and expensive that reminded him of the gap between their worlds. And Ethan, you're wrong about one thing. I'm not doing this just for Mia or for the project or for closure. I'm doing it for you too. Because you deserve someone who shows up, who fights, who doesn't run when things get hard. And I want to be that person. I'm going to be that person. Before he could respond, she was gone, her footsteps echoing in the stairwell as she descended to the parking lot. Ethan stood in the doorway long after her car had pulled away, trying to make sense of the emotions churning through him. Anger, yes, still anger at her presumption, at the pattern of making decisions without him. But underneath the anger was something else, hope, fragile and dangerous, that maybe she meant what she said, that maybe people really could change, that maybe forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of the past, but about creating space for a different future. His phone buzzed. Martinez again. Any progress? Ethan typed back. Maybe. Board meeting tomorrow. I'll know more after. Fingers crossed, brother. We need this. Ethan closed the door and moved through the apartment, turning off lights, checking locks, performing the nightly rituals that gave structure to his life. In Mia's room, she was already asleep, her book abandoned on the floor beside the bed. He picked it up, marked her place, and set it on her nightstand. Her face in sleep was peaceful, trusting, completely unaware of the adult complications swirling around her. She was right, though. He wasn't good at staying mad. Anger had never been his natural state. Even when Sarah died, even when life felt impossibly unfair, he'd channeled his emotions into action, into taking care of Mia, into building a life that worked even when it hurt. Forgiveness came more naturally to him than grudges. Not because he was particularly noble, but because holding on to anger took energy he didn't have to spare. But forgiveness didn't mean trust. And trust was what Lena was asking for. Trust that she'd changed. that she wouldn't run, that she could be the partner she claimed she wanted to be. That kind of trust had to be earned, piece by piece, decision by decision, moment by moment. Tomorrow would be the first test. If she could walk into that boardroom and admit she'd made a mistake, if she could prioritize the workers over her pride, if she could choose vulnerability over invincibility, then maybe, just maybe, there was hope for whatever this thing between them was becoming. And if she couldn't, then Ethan would know, definitively, that the gap between their worlds was too wide to bridge, that the girl he'd loved had been completely replaced by the CEO, and no amount of wishing would bring her back. He settled onto the couch with his phone, pulling up the local news without really reading it, just needing the distraction. But his mind kept circling back to Lena's face when she'd kissed Mia goodnight, to the raw honesty when she'd admitted her fears about being vulnerable, to the way her hand had trembled in his. She was scared. He could see that clearly now. Scared of failure, scared of weakness, scared of being truly known and found wanting. It was a fear he understood intimately. Every day as a single father involved the terror that he wasn't enough, that Mia deserved more than he could give, that one wrong decision would damage her irreparably. But fear was only paralyzing if you let it be. Ethan had learned to push through his fear, to make decisions even when he wasn't sure they were right, to trust that love and intention could compensate for imperfection. Lena needed to learn the same lesson, needed to understand that being powerful meant nothing if you couldn't also be present, vulnerable, and human. Tomorrow would tell him if she could. He must have dozed off on the couch because when his phone rang, the apartment was dark and his neck was stiff from the awkward angle. He fumbled for the phone, checking the time, 11:47 p.m., before seeing Lena's name on the screen. Hello? His voice was rough with sleep. I'm sorry, I know it's late. I needed to tell you something. Lena sounded wide awake, wired. I've been preparing for the board meeting, and I realized I was doing it wrong. I was trying to spin the narrative, to make myself look good while fixing the problem. But that's not what you asked me to do. Ethan sat up, fully alert now. Okay. You asked me to tell the truth, to admit I made a mistake, and I've spent the last 3 hours trying to figure out how to do that without making myself look weak or incompetent, and I finally realized that's the problem. I'm still trying to control the narrative, still trying to manage how people perceive me, still choosing the armor over the vulnerability. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. You are. So I'm going to stop. Tomorrow, I'm walking into that boardroom and telling them exactly what happened, that I made a personal decision based on fear and emotional complications, that I didn't properly vet it with the team, and that I was wrong. I'm going to recommend reinstating the funding, and I'm going to accept whatever consequences come from that admission. Even if it means they question your leadership? Even then. She paused. Because you were right. I can't build real relationships while hiding behind corporate armor. I can't ask you and Mia to trust me if I'm not willing to be honest about my failures. So I'm choosing the vulnerability. I'm choosing to be human instead of perfect. Something loosened in Ethan's chest. That takes guts. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'd rather be terrified and honest than safe and alone. I've been alone long enough. Lena, don't. Don't say anything yet. Just let me get through tomorrow. Let me prove I can do this. Then we can talk about what comes next. Her voice softened. Thank you, Ethan, for pushing me, for not letting me hide, for seeing that I needed to be challenged instead of accommodated. That's what... He stopped, the word partners hanging unspoken between them. That's what people do when they care about each other. Is that what we're doing, caring about each other? I think, Ethan said slowly, we never stopped. We just lost our way for a while. I'd like to find our way back, Lena whispered. If you'll let me try. One day at a time, he told her. Starting with tomorrow. Fix what you broke, Lena. Then we'll figure out the rest. One day at a time, she agreed. Good night, Ethan. Good night. He sat in the darkness long after the call ended, feeling the shift that had occurred. Subtle, but significant. Lena was trying. Really trying. Not just saying the right words, but wrestling with the hard work of actual change. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build on. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from Lena. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. Ethan stared at the message, then typed back. Don't thank me yet. Prove it tomorrow. Her response was immediate. I will. For Mia. For the workers. For you. For us. That last word, us, hung in his mind as he finally dragged himself to bed. Us. Like they were a unit. Like they were building toward something together instead of just navigating around past damage. It was too soon to call it hope. Too fragile to trust completely. But it was something, and after a decade of nothing, something felt like a miracle. Ethan's phone rang at 3:47 p.m. the next day, while he was inspecting rebar placements on the 6th floor of the Martinez project. He'd been checking his phone obsessively since noon, when Lena's board meeting had been scheduled to start, and the wait had stretched his nerves to breaking point. He yanked off his work gloves and answered before the second ring. It's done. Lena's voice was shaky but triumphant. The funding's reinstated. Full amount original terms, the project secure. Ethan felt his knees go weak with relief. He moved away from his crew, seeking privacy near the edge of the floor where the afternoon sun cut harsh shadows across unfinished concrete. What happened? What did you tell them? The truth. All of it. She laughed, the sound edged with exhaustion. I told them I'd made a decision based on personal complications rather than business merit, that I'd acted impulsively without proper consultation, and that I was wrong. I told them the Martinez project was sound, that pulling our funding had been an error in judgment, and that I was recommending immediate reinstatement. How did they take it? About how you'd expect. Thomas Brennan looked like I'd grown a second head. Jennifer Chen asked if I was feeling well. And David Martinez, no relation to your Martinez, different guy, actually smiled, said it was the first honest thing he'd heard in a board meeting in 20 years. Lena paused. They voted to reinstate. Unanimous. But Ethan, there were questions. About my fitness to lead, about whether this was indicative of larger judgment issues. I have to meet with the executive committee next week to discuss leadership stability. I'm sorry. And he was, even though this was what he'd asked her to do. That must have been hard. It was terrifying. I've spent 10 years building this image of infallibility, and I just shattered it in front of the 12 people whose confidence I need most. She took a shaky breath. But you know what? I feel lighter, like I've been carrying this crushing weight of always having to be perfect, and I finally set it down. Even if it cost me, Ethan, it was worth it, because I did the right thing, for the right reasons, and I can live with that. Ethan pressed his forehead against the cool metal of a support beam, overwhelmed by the courage that must have taken. You did good, Lena. Really good. I did it for you, for us. Her voice dropped. Can I see you tonight? After Mia's asleep? I know we said one day at a time, but I need to talk to you about where we go from here. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. Come by around 8:30. I'll be there. He ended the call and immediately dialed Martinez. We're good. Funding's back. Project secure. Martinez whooped so loudly that Ethan had to pull the phone away from his ear. You beautiful bastard. I don't know what you did, but you saved 24 jobs. Drinks are on me. Hell, drinks are on me for the next month. Just doing what needed to be done. Ethan smiled despite the emotional exhaustion creeping through him. Tell the crew, would you? Let them know they can stop worrying. Already on it. But Cole? Whatever's going on with this woman, whatever complicated situation you're navigating, handle it carefully. Someone who can pull millions and reinstate them with a phone call, that's a different kind of power than we're used to dealing with. I know. Ethan had been acutely aware of that power imbalance from the moment he'd learned who Lena had become. But she's trying, Martinez, really trying. That's got to count for something. It counts for a lot. Just don't lose yourself in the process, you hear me? You're a good man, Cole. Don't let anyone make you forget that. The advice settled into Ethan's chest as he returned to work, trying to focus on measurements and specifications when his mind wanted to spin forward to the evening ahead. Lena was coming over. They were going to talk about the future, about what this thing between them could become, and for the first time since she'd reappeared in his life, Ethan felt like they might actually have a chance at figuring it out. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan left the site at 5, picked up Mia from after-school care, and made dinner while she chattered about a science project on the solar system. He helped her build a model of Jupiter out of a foam ball and paint, listening to her explain the Great Red Spot with infectious enthusiasm, but his mind kept drifting to Lena, to the vulnerability in her voice when she'd said, "I need to talk to you," to the weight of everything they still hadn't resolved. By 8:15, Mia was bathed, storied, and tucked into bed, and Ethan was pacing his small living room like a caged animal. He'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a plain blue Henley, then felt ridiculous for carrying what he wore. This wasn't a date. This was a conversation about whether two people with a decade of damage between them could build something new. Except it felt like more than that. It felt like standing on the edge of something huge and terrifying and potentially wonderful and not knowing whether to jump or step back to safety. The knock came at exactly 8:30. Ethan opened the door to find Lena still in her business clothes, tailored slacks and a silk blouse, but she'd removed her blazer and let her hair down, and there was something different in her face. A softness. An openness. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi, come in." She entered, and this time when she looked around his apartment, it wasn't with the assessing gaze of their first confrontation. She looked at it like she was trying to memorize it, to understand the life he'd built in her absence. "Can I get you something? Coffee, water, beer?" "Water's fine." She settled on the couch, and Ethan busied himself in the kitchen, grateful for something to do with his hands. When he returned with 2 glasses, she took hers with a small smile. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like humidity. Finally, Lena set down her glass and turned to face him fully. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get through it before you respond. Can you do that?" Ethan nodded, his heart rate picking up. "When I lost the baby 10 years ago, something broke in me. Not just the grief of the loss itself, but the guilt of knowing I'd left you to deal with that choice alone. That I'd let my parents manipulate me into abandoning the person I loved most." She was speaking carefully, like she'd rehearsed this. "I convinced myself I didn't deserve forgiveness, didn't deserve happiness. So I built this empire out of my guilt, thinking that if I could be successful enough, powerful enough, untouchable enough, it would fill the emptiness. But it didn't. It just made me lonelier." She paused, gathering herself. "Then I started volunteering at the school, and I met Mia, this brilliant, funny, kind little girl who reminded me so much of what I'd lost. And I didn't know she was yours. I swear I didn't, but something in me connected with her anyway, like my heart recognized something my mind couldn't see." "Lena." "Let me finish, please." She took a shaky breath. "When I saw you in that hallway, when I realized Mia was your daughter, I panicked. Because here was this tangible reminder of everything I'd thrown away, everything I'd lost standing right in front of me. And my first instinct was to run again, to protect myself from the pain of facing what I'd done." "But you didn't run," Ethan said softly. "No. Because of Mia. Because she looked at me like I mattered, like I was someone worth knowing, and I couldn't bear to disappoint her. So I stayed. And the more time I spent with both of you, the more I realized I don't want to be the person I've been for the past decade. I don't want to be invulnerable and isolated and powerful. I want to be human. I want to be someone who shows up, who admits mistakes, who fights for the people she loves even when it's hard." She reached for his hand, and Ethan let her take it, feeling the tremor in her fingers. "I love you, Ethan. I never stopped. And I love Mia. Not because she's a replacement for what I lost, but because she's herself. Amazing and unique and deserving of all the love in the world. And I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I hurt you in ways that can't just be erased. But if you'll let me, I want to spend whatever time you'll give me proving that I've changed, that I can be the partner you deserve, the person Mia deserves in her life." The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying in their vulnerability. Ethan looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between her smooth skin and his work-roughened palms, and felt something shift in his chest. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of trusting you again and getting hurt. Scared of what it means to let you into Mia's life permanently and then have you leave. Scared that the gap between our worlds is too wide to bridge."
He met her eyes. But I'm also tired of being scared. Tired of protecting myself so carefully that I don't let anything good in. And Lena, you, feel good. Feels like maybe it's worth the risk. Hope flared in her face. Yeah? Yeah. But I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we try to build something real, it can't be like before. We can't be kids playing at forever without understanding what that means. We're adults now, with responsibilities and complications, and a daughter watching every move we make. He squeezed her hand. So we go slow. We figure this out one day at a time. And if there's ever a moment where you want to run, where things get hard and your instinct is to disappear, you come to me first. You tell me what you're feeling. You let me help carry the weight. That's what partners do. Partners, Lena repeated, and the word sounded like a prayer. I like the sound of that. Me too. Ethan felt a smile tugging at his mouth despite everything. But Lena, I mean it about going slow. Mia comes first, always. And I need to know you understand that. I do, and I wouldn't want it any other way. She shifted closer, and Ethan could smell her perfume, feel the warmth of her presence. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think you could love me again? Not the girl I was, but the person I am now, with all my mistakes and complications and corporate baggage? Ethan considered the question seriously, looking at the woman before him. She wasn't the carefree art student he'd fallen for at 23. She was harder in some ways, scarred by loss and years of emotional isolation. But she was also braver than that girl had been, more willing to face difficult truths, more capable of the kind of vulnerability that real intimacy required. I think, he said slowly, I already do. Have been falling for you again since that first night in the library, watching you read to kids like it was the most important thing in the world, since you stood up to your board and risked your career for 24 workers you'd never met, since you looked at my daughter like she hung the moon. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You're not who you were, Lena, but I think I might love who you are even more. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then she was kissing him. It was tentative at first, asking permission, but when Ethan responded, deepening the kiss, 10 years of longing and loss and loneliness poured into it. She tasted like hope and second chances, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. We're really doing this, he murmured. We're really doing this, she confirmed. Slow, careful, one day at a time. What about your company? The board meeting next week about your leadership. Lena pulled back slightly, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about that, about what I actually want my life to look like. And I realized I don't want to be CEO anymore. I don't want to spend 12 hours a day in meetings and strategy sessions, making decisions about developments I'll never see completed. I want time. Time for reading groups and school plays and quiet dinners. Time to build a life instead of an empire. You're going to step down? I'm going to transition. Promote my COO to CEO. Move myself to an advisory role. Still involved enough to ensure the company stays ethical and focused on community development, but not drowning in day-to-day operations. She smiled. Turns out, you don't need to be powerful to matter. You just need to show up for the people who count on you. That's going to be a big change. I know, but it's the right one. I've spent 10 years chasing success, thinking it would fill the emptiness. Time to try something different. She touched his face gently. Time to chase what actually matters. A sound from the hallway made them both turn. Mia stood in her doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her nightgown rumpled. Dad? I heard voices. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, baby. Ethan stood, moving toward her. Ms. Hart and I were just talking. What are you doing up? I had a dream about the dragon book, the part where... She stopped, noticing Lena on the couch. Oh, hi, Ms. Hart.
Are you having another grown-up conversation? Something like that, Lena said, smiling. But we're done now. You should go back to bed. Will you tuck me in? The question was directed at both of them, innocent and devastating in its assumption that this was normal, that Lena belonged here. Ethan looked at Lena, a question in his eyes, and she nodded. Together they walked Mia back to her room, and Ethan watched as Lena settled onto the edge of Mia's bed with the ease of someone who'd done this before. "Tell me about your dragon dream," Lena said, smoothing back Mia's hair. The dragon and the knight were friends, and they were protecting the village together. But then the dragon got hurt, and the knight was really sad. But then the dragon got better because the knight took care of it, and they had a party. Mia yawned hugely. "Do you think people can be like that? Hurt and then get better?" "I do," Lena said softly, glancing at Ethan. "I think sometimes people get hurt, and it takes them a long time to heal. But if they have someone who cares about them, someone willing to help them through the hard parts, they can get better. They can even be stronger than before." "Like you and Dad," Mia said matter-of-factly. "You got hurt a long time ago, but now you're getting better, together." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "How do you know that, sweetheart?" "Because you both have the same look, like you're sad but also happy. Like something hurt, but it's starting to feel better." She reached for Lena's hand. "I'm glad you're getting better. I like it when you're here." "I like being here," Lena whispered. "Very much." "Are you going to keep coming for reading group and stuff?" "If your dad says it's okay, I'd like to come for more than just reading group." Lena looked at Ethan. "Maybe for dinners sometimes, for school events, for whatever you guys will let me be part of." Mia's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You could come to my science fair next month, and the winter concert, and Dad makes really good spaghetti on Fridays, even though it's from a jar, and you could come for that too." "Mia, slow down." Ethan moved to the other side of her bed, his hand finding Lena's on top of the blanket. "Miss Hart is going to be around more, but we're taking things slow, okay? We're all figuring this out together." "But she is staying?" Mia looked between them, suddenly serious. "She's not going to disappear like Mom did?" The question hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Mia rarely mentioned Sarah, had been too young when she died to have clear memories, but she understood absence, understood loss. "I'm not going anywhere," Lena said firmly. "Mia, I promise you, I am not disappearing. I'm going to be here for reading group and science fairs and winter concerts and Friday spaghetti. I'm going to show up every time because you matter to me. You and your dad both matter to me more than anything." "Okay." Mia's voice was small but trusting. "I believe you." "Good." Lena leaned down, kissing Mia's forehead. "Now sleep. You've got school tomorrow, and Mrs. Patterson will not be happy if you're yawning through math." "Mrs. Patterson is never happy," Mia grumbled, but she was already settling deeper into her pillow. "Good night, Ms. Hart." "Good night, Dad." "Good night, baby," Ethan said, tucking the blanket around her. They left her room together, pulling the door mostly closed, and stood in the hallway for a moment just looking at each other. "She's going to hold you to that promise," Ethan said quietly, "about not disappearing." "I know, and I meant every word." Lena took his hand. "Ethan, I know it's going to take time for you to trust me completely. I know I have to earn that. But I want you to know, I'm committed to this, to you, to Mia, to building something real. Whatever that takes. Even if it means Friday night spaghetti from a jar?" She laughed. "Especially if it means that." They returned to the living room, but instead of sitting, they stood by the window looking out at the parking lot and the quiet street beyond. Ethan's apartment wasn't much, fifth-floor walk-up in a complex that had seen better days, but standing here with Lena, her hand in his, it felt like enough. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "What does slow look like for us?" "Dinner," Ethan said. "Actual dates, just the two of us, where we talk and figure out who we are now. Not who we were, but who we've become." He turned to face her. "And time with Mia. Family time. You coming to her school events, having dinner with us, being part of the regular rhythm of our lives. Let her get used to having you around. Let me get used to it too. And eventually? Eventually we see where it goes. Maybe you meet Martinez and the guys from work. Maybe I meet your friends, if you have any outside the corporate world." He smiled. "Maybe we take Mia to the zoo or the museum or one of those places she's been begging to visit. We build a life together, piece by piece, until one day we look around and realize we're a family. A family, Lena echoed, and her eyes were bright with tears. I like the sound of that. Me too. Ethan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. But Lena, I need to know something. Are you sure about stepping back from Meridian? I don't want you resenting me 5 years from now because you gave up your career. I'm not giving it up. I'm restructuring it to fit the life I actually want to live. She looked up at him. For 10 years, I used work to avoid feeling anything. Avoided relationships, avoided vulnerability, avoided anything that might crack the armor I'd built. But that's not living, Ethan. That's just existing. And I'm tired of just existing. What do you want instead? This. She gestured at the small apartment, at Mia's closed door, at the simple ordinary life he'd built. I want Friday night spaghetti and school science fairs. I want to read stories to kids who look at me like I'm magic because I brought them books. I want to wake up on Saturday mornings and have nowhere more important to be than here, with you and Mia, making pancakes or watching cartoons or doing absolutely nothing. She smiled. I want ordinary, Ethan. I've had extraordinary and it's lonely. I want ordinary and real and full of love. You know we're broke, right? He felt compelled to be honest. I mean, we're comfortable, but there's no luxury cars or vacation homes or whatever you're used to. It's work boots and used furniture and figuring out how to make the grocery budget stretch. I know. And I have enough money that we'd never struggle, but Ethan, I don't want to be the rich girlfriend who sweeps in and solves all your problems with her checkbook. That creates the same power imbalance as pulling project funding. I want us to be partners, equals. She paused, thinking, what if we kept our finances separate for now? You maintain your independence, I maintain mine, and we figure out how to build a life together that doesn't depend on my money. And when Mia needs something, when her orthodontist bills come due, or she wants to go to summer camp or college tuition starts looming, then we talk about it together as partners, and we make decisions that feel right for our family, not decisions based on who has more money in the bank. Lena's voice was firm. I won't use my wealth to control or fix things, but I also won't pretend it doesn't exist. We'll find a balance. Ethan considered this, recognizing the wisdom in it. Okay, we try it your way. Separate finances, share decisions, and we figure out the details as we go. Thank you, she kissed him softly, for trusting me enough to try. They talked for another hour, sitting close on the couch, making plans and dreaming about possibilities. Lena would keep volunteering at the school, would come to Friday dinners, would be a consistent presence in Mia's life. Ethan would take her on actual dates, would introduce her slowly to his world, would give her the chance to prove she meant what she said about staying. And together, they'd build something new, not a recreation of what they'd lost, but something better, stronger, built on truth and hard-won trust. By the time Lena left, it was past midnight, and Ethan felt exhausted but lighter than he had in years. He checked on Mia one more time, found her sleeping peacefully, and then collapsed into his own bed with a smile on his face. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Thank you for giving me another chance. I won't waste it. He typed back, thank you for fighting for it, for us. Sleep well, you too. See you Friday for spaghetti? Wouldn't miss it. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Lena came to Friday dinners, where she gamely ate jarred spaghetti sauce and taught Mia how to make garlic bread from scratch. She attended Mia's science fair, where Mia's Jupiter model won second place, and Lena cheered like it was the Nobel Prize. She showed up for the winter concert, sitting between Ethan and Martinez's wife Rosa, clapping enthusiastically through 20 renditions of Jingle Bells. Ethan took Lena to Martinez's favorite dive bar, where she drank beer from a bottle, and charmed his entire crew with her genuine interest in their lives. He took her to the batting cages, where she was terrible but laughed at her own incompetence. He took her to the construction site one Saturday, showed her the work he did, and watched her face as she understood the pride he took in building things that would last. And slowly, carefully, they fell in love again. Not the desperate, passionate love of their youth, but something deeper, more grounded, built on truth and shared history and the decision to choose each other despite everything that had tried to pull them apart. 3 months after that pivotal board meeting, Lena officially stepped down as CEO of Meridian Development. The press release called it a strategic transition to advisory leadership.
But Ethan knew what it really was. A woman choosing life over empire, presence over power, love over loneliness. He picked her up from her last day at the office, found her standing on the sidewalk with a single box of personal belongings, looking both terrified and liberated. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like jumping off a cliff and discovering I can fly," she said, then laughed. "Is that too dramatic?" "Maybe a little, but I like it." He took the box from her, loaded it into his truck. "Mia's at Sophie's for the evening. We've got 3 hours before I need to pick her up. What do you want to do?" Lena looked at him, this man who'd forgiven her when he had every right not to, who'd let her back into his life with such careful generosity, who'd shown her that being ordinary was actually extraordinary when you did it with the right people. "Take me home," she said. "Your home. Our home. I just want to be there. With you." So he did. They spent the evening cooking dinner together. Actual cooking, not jarred sauce. And talking about her plans for the advisory role, about Mia's upcoming birthday party, about the future they were building one day at a time. And when Ethan picked up Mia later, she came home to find Lena at their apartment, and her face lit up like it always did when Lena was there. "Are you staying for bedtime?" Mia asked hopefully. "If that's okay with you guys, I'd love to," Lena said. "It's okay with us," Ethan confirmed, and the simple domesticity of it, of Mia's bath time and story time and tucking in, with Lena participating in all of it like she belonged, felt like the most radical act of hope he'd ever experienced. After Mia was asleep, Lena lingered by the door, not quite ready to leave. "I could stay," she said tentatively. "On the couch. Just to be here? If that's okay." Ethan considered this, understanding what she was really asking, not for sex or romance, but for belonging, for the right to wake up in this space, to be part of morning routines, to move from visitor to family. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." She stayed. And the next morning, Mia found them making breakfast together, Ethan on pancakes, Lena on bacon, and she didn't question it, just climbed onto her bar stool and asked if she could have chocolate chips in her pancakes. It became a pattern. Lena staying over on weekends, then occasionally on weeknights when work ran late and the apartment was closer than her penthouse. She kept a toothbrush in the bathroom, then some clothes in Ethan's closet, then half the dresser was hers, and it felt natural instead of rushed. 6 months after their reconciliation, Ethan came home from work to find Lena and Mia in the kitchen, covered in flour, laughing hysterically over what appeared to be a failed attempt at homemade pizza dough. "What happened here?" he asked, surveying the disaster. "Science experiment gone wrong," Mia announced. "Ms. Hart said yeast was supposed to make it rise, but it exploded instead." "It didn't explode," Lena protested. "It just expanded more enthusiastically than anticipated." "That's fancy talk for exploded," Mia said wisely, making both adults laugh. Ethan joined them, salvaging what he could of the dough, and they ended up ordering pizza instead. They ate it on the floor of the living room, Mia between them, watching a movie about dragons and knights that reminded Ethan of how far they'd all come. Later, after Mia was asleep, Lena curled into Ethan's side on the couch. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. His heart jumped. "Okay." "I sold the penthouse, put in an offer on a house, 3 bedrooms, yard, good school district, about 10 minutes from here." She looked up at him. "I know we haven't talked about living together officially, and I'm not pressuring you, but I wanted a real home, Ethan, not a showpiece apartment in the sky. And I thought maybe, eventually, if we keep moving in this direction, maybe you and Mia might want to live there too, with me." Ethan absorbed this, the enormity of what she was proposing. "You bought a house." "I put in an offer, haven't closed yet. I can back out if this is too fast, if I'm pushing too hard." "Show me the listing." She pulled out her phone, brought up photos of a charming craftsman-style house with a porch and a big backyard. 3 bedrooms, like she'd said, updated kitchen, hardwood floors, nothing extravagant but solid and warm and exactly the kind of place Ethan had always imagined raising Mia in, but could never afford on his salary. "What do you think?" Lena asked nervously. "I think it's perfect. I think you're perfect. And I think—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think Mia and I would love to live there with you. When you're ready. When we're all ready." "Really?"
Really? But Lena, we split the mortgage, and the utilities and groceries and everything else. I won't let you buy us a life. We build it together. Together, she agreed, and kissed him like she was sealing a promise. They told Mia the next morning over breakfast, and she reacted exactly as they'd hoped, with shrieking excitement and 1,000 questions about whether she could paint her new room purple and if the backyard was big enough for a dog. We'll see about the dog, Ethan hedged, making Lena laugh. That means yes in parent speak, Mia informed Lena confidently. I'm getting a dog. The house closed 6 weeks later, and they moved in on a bright Saturday in May, with help from Martinez and his crew, from Lena's assistant, Jennifer, who'd become a genuine friend, from Mrs. Patterson and several other teachers from Mia's school who'd watched this family form and wanted to support it. They painted Mia's room purple. They adopted a rescue dog, a mutt with floppy ears and boundless energy that Mia named Dragon. They planted a garden in the backyard and filled the house with photos and art and the accumulation of shared life. And one evening in late summer, with Mia at a sleepover and the house quiet around them, Ethan found Lena on the back porch, watching fireflies drift across the yard. Penny for your thoughts, he said, settling beside her. I was thinking about how different my life is now. How a year ago I was alone in a penthouse, running an empire I didn't care about, filling my time with work because I was too scared to feel anything. She leaned against him. And now I'm here, with you and Mia and Dragon, living in a house that actually feels like a home. And I'm happy, Ethan. Really, genuinely happy for the first time in 10 years. Me too. He took her hand, felt the rightness of it. Lena, I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and her breath caught when she saw it. Inside was a simple ring, nothing ostentatious, just a single diamond on a silver band. I know we said slow, Ethan started, but we've been building this life together for almost a year now, and I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to keep calling you my girlfriend when you're so much more than that. You're my partner, my best friend, the person I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life. He opened the box. Lena Hart, will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed as the fireflies danced around them, two people who'd lost each other and found their way back against all odds. They told Mia the next morning, and she reacted with typical 7-year-old pragmatism. Does this mean Ms. Hart is going to be my mom now? If you want her to be, Ethan said carefully. Mia considered this, then looked at Lena. Will you still read me stories? Every night, Lena promised, and help with my homework, even the math. And come to all my school stuff? Wouldn't miss it. Okay, Mia decided. Yabasha. Then you can be my mom, but I'm still calling you Lena because Ms. Hart is too formal for family. Lena works perfectly, Lena said, pulling Mia into a hug. They got married 3 months later in their backyard, with Martinez as Ethan's best man and Mia as the flower girl. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and the family they'd built together. No corporate acquaintances or business associates, just the people who mattered. Lena wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. Ethan wore his only suit, pressed and cleaned for the occasion. And Mia wore purple, because of course she did, and carried a basket of rose petals like it was the most important job in the world. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Mia stage whispered, "You better not, or Dragon and I will fight you," which made everyone laugh and perfectly captured the fierce protectiveness this little girl felt for her family. Ethan and Lena exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Ethan promised to always communicate, to never let fear keep him from honesty, to build their life together one decision at a time. Lena promised to show up, to choose vulnerability over armor, to never run from the hard conversations. And then Lena turned to Mia, pulled out a second ring, a delicate silver band with a small amethyst, and knelt before her. Mia, you didn't get a choice in any of this. You didn't choose to have me enter your life, didn't choose to have me become part of your family, but I'm asking you now if you'll choose to be my daughter, not to replace the mother you lost, but to let me be a second mom who loves you with everything I have. She held out the ring. Will you let me be your family, officially and always? Mia looked at the ring, then at Lena, then at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. You promise you'll stay?
Forever? Forever, Lena said firmly. Through good days and bad days, through school plays and teenage drama and everything in between. I'm not going anywhere, Mia. You're stuck with me. Okay, Mia held out her hand. I choose you too. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard as Lena slipped the ring onto Mia's finger. And when they sealed the ceremony with a family hug, all three of them, with Dragon barking excitedly at their feet, Ethan felt a completeness he hadn't known was possible. This was what forgiveness looked like, he realized. Not erasing the past, but choosing to build a future despite it. Not pretending wounds hadn't happened, but healing them together through honesty and time and stubborn, determined love. They had a small reception in the yard with music and dancing and cake that Mia and Lena had made together. Martinez gave a toast about second chances and choosing courage over comfort. Jennifer talked about watching Lena transform from an isolated CEO into a woman who'd learned that true power came from connection, not control. And as the sun set and the party wound down, Ethan found Lena standing by the garden they'd planted together, watching the last of their guests say goodbye. "What are you thinking?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That I spent 10 years running from the best thing that ever happened to me, and that I'm the luckiest person alive that you let me find my way back." She turned in his arms. "Thank you, Ethan, for forgiving me another chance, for showing me what love actually looks like when it's built on truth." "Thank you for fighting for us," he replied, "for choosing vulnerability, for becoming the kind of person who shows up, even when it's hard." "Always," she promised. "For you and Mia, always." They stood there as the sky darkened and the fireflies emerged. Two people who'd been broken by loss and silence, but who'd found their way to something better. Something built not on the naive certainty of youth, but on the hard-won wisdom of adults who'd learned that real love required courage, honesty, and the willingness to keep choosing each other every single day. Inside the house, Mia was showing Dragon her new ring, telling the dog about how they were a real family now, how Lena was staying forever, how everything was exactly as it should be. And in that moment, standing in the yard of the home they'd built together, Ethan knew she was right. They were a family, chosen, fought for, built piece by piece from broken fragments. And it was better than anything he could have imagined, messy and imperfect and real and full of the kind of love that didn't just endure but transformed everyone it touched. This was their happy ending. Not perfect, but true. And that made all the difference.